Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
People claim heartbreak kills, but they never foresaw my funeral. Lightning never struck my marriage. Betrayal crept in silently instead. Dread fueled each heartbeat, driving me toward one terrible choice. I listened to her whispers, then watched her kiss another. Flames, twisted metal, and lost innocence became my final signature. Nobody realized survival could taste like vengeance, scorched with guilt. My children believed I perished. Their tears fueled my ruse. Years vanished under false names, forging a mask of revenge. She never saw me lurking, desperate to reclaim stolen hope. Before we begin, let me know where you're tuning in from down in the comments. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next tale. I still remember the first time I spotted Angela in that crowded lecture hall, years before either of us had any idea where we'd end up. Back then, it was just a Wednesday in early September, the classroom buzzing with first week of college nerves. I was hunting for a seat that wasn't too close to the front but wouldn't get me lost in the back row. And there she was, a petite girl with auburn hair and the brightest smile I'd ever seen, waving me over as if we'd known each other forever. "Is this seat taken?" I asked, balancing my thick Intro to Psych textbook against my arm. She shook her head. "No, please. Sit. I'm Angela." "I'm David," I replied, heartbeat pounding for reasons I didn't fully understand. Something about her was magnetic. Maybe it was how she leaned in to speak, as though her words were just for me, or the crinkle in her eyes whenever she found something amusing. From that very first day, we discovered that we shared a sense of humor about everything from awkward icebreakers to the weird campus cafeteria food. In my mind, our college years blur into a long montage of midnight coffees and weekend football games, but the moments with Angela shine brightest. We grew closer quickly. Group study sessions turned into late-night heart-to-hearts. Casual lunches became weekend movie nights. It all felt effortless. I remember how she'd text me at random hours, nothing urgent, just a silly meme or a joke she wanted to share. I'd find myself smiling at my phone like a complete fool. She was a nursing major at first, but switched to education after 2 semesters because, in her words, "I can't stand the sight of blood, David. I thought I could handle it, but I can't." I teased her mercilessly about the wasted chemistry labs, but she gave it right back. "You're one to talk, Mr. Business Administration, with a minor in procrastination." College was nothing if not a time to figure yourself out, and from my perspective, Angela was blossoming with each decision she made, each fear she overcame. I proposed on a whim, though I'd been planning it in my head for months. During our junior year, we'd driven out to a local beach on a cold February afternoon, hardly typical romance, but that was us, always a bit offbeat. The wind whipped our hair in all directions. I remember my heart thudding in my chest and Angela's cheeks turning rosy from the cold. She laughed. "We must be crazy to come out here in winter." I dropped to one knee, my voice shakier than it had ever been. "Angela, will you keep being crazy with me for the rest of our lives?" For a split second, her eyes went as wide as the ocean behind her. Then she said yes, tears mixing with the biting wind on her face. I slipped on the modest ring I'd saved for by working part-time at an auto shop. And right then, the horizon behind us seemed to sparkle. We married shortly after graduation in a simple ceremony on Angela's grandparents' farm. Only our closest friends and family attended. She wore a casual lace dress, and I sported a slim-cut suit that my mom insisted on buying me. I kept expecting some meltdown or crisis, someone to protest that we were too young or that the cake was the wrong flavor. Nothing happened. The day was as perfect as we could have hoped. Angela's parents cried, my mom cried, and I'm sure if I'm honest, I was choking back tears too. Over the next couple of years, we learned about real life. No more campus meal plans, no more sleeping in until noon. Most days, anyway. Instead, we had bills, job applications, and the stress of forging a path in a competitive world. I landed an entry-level position in a small marketing agency, while Angela started teaching at a local elementary school. Early on, we lived in a cramped apartment where the neighbors blasted music at 3 a.m. and the walls were so thin you could hear the entire building's conversations. But we were a team, so we made it work. One night, as we huddled on our hand-me-down couch, Angela leaned her head against my shoulder and said, "You know, we're really lucky." I turned to her. "Oh yeah? We can't afford a new TV. We have about $200 total in our bank accounts and we're eating frozen dinners." She smiled softly. "Yeah, but we have each other. That's enough for me." I often think back to that moment. There was something so pure in the way she said it, like we were building a fortress of love that money problems or outside chaos couldn't break through. I'd never felt so certain that I'd picked the right person to share life's ups and downs. People sometimes ask if I ever had doubts, if there was ever a sign Angela would change or that our marriage might go off track. If there were signs, they were too faint for me to see. In those early days, she was my rock, and I prided myself on being hers. We faced normal newlywed spats arguing over leaving dishes in the sink or whether to spend $30 on a new lamp. But never in my wildest dreams did I suspect we'd face anything more severe. When Angela found out she was pregnant with twins, I cried tears of joy. I was at work, about to head into a meeting when she texted me, "We're having two, not one." I remember reading it over and over, thinking she must be joking. But sure enough, it was real. The pregnancy was challenging morning sickness times 2, cravings at 2 a.m. for pickles and cookie dough. Yes, both at once. I did my best to keep her comfortable, though I mostly just ended up running errands. I'd find myself beaming whenever I felt the babies kicking her belly. It was a surreal, breathtaking journey. A lot of people our age were still partying or traveling on a whim, but we were preparing for Jacob and Lily's arrival. The day they were born, the hospital room was chaos, nurses and doctors rushing around. Angela's face showed pure determination. I think I was more nervous than she was. When I heard Jacob's first cry, and then Lily's right after, it was the biggest rush of love I've ever felt. Angela and I locked eyes. "We did it," she whispered, exhausted yet triumphant. I felt like my heart might burst. Months rolled by, and life changed drastically. Our once carefree nights turned into feedings every 3 hours, piles of laundry, and constant worry about whether we were being good parents. We juggled finances carefully. I was promoted from an entry-level grunt to a marketing executive. Angela, meanwhile, balanced being a mom and an elementary school teacher. Despite the sleep deprivation, we saw it as a good, challenging adventure, one we tackled as partners. To celebrate the twins turning 1, we moved into a cozier house in the suburbs, nothing fancy, just a little 3-bedroom with a small backyard. Angela decorated the kids' room in bright colors, painting cartoon animals on one wall. She was so creative, so full of ideas and energy. I used to think that spark in her eyes would never dim. In those early years, we had typical fights, but always circled back to an apology, a kiss, a reaffirmation of love. I recall one night, "Why did you buy that brand of diapers?" I said, frustrated about some silly detail. "I had coupons, David," she shot back, exasperated. "We're saving money." Then a couple hours later, we were on the couch, softly laughing at how we'd gone from carefree college kids to bickering over diapers. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours, and I believed wholeheartedly that we were in it together. Nothing about Angela indicated she was unhappy. If she was, she hid it behind her usual brightness. We had small date nights whenever my mom could babysit. We'd talk about the future, our kids' education, and maybe traveling once the twins got older. I felt secure, content, and proud that we'd built such a strong foundation. Back then, I didn't realize that hidden inside all that daily busyness was a restlessness growing in Angela. Sometimes she'd be unusually quiet at dinner, or I'd catch her staring out the window with an almost longing look on her face. I'd brush it off, thinking, she must be tired, or she's got a lot on her plate. If only I'd asked more questions. Who knows? Maybe everything would have turned out differently. A few years after the twins were born, Angela started talking about doing something bigger. It was a phrase she dropped in conversation every so often, usually right before bed or on lazy Sunday afternoons. I love teaching, but it's not my entire identity, you know? Jacob and Lily were 3 years old by then, rambunctious and curious about everything. They'd chase each other around the living room in a non-stop loop of giggles. I enjoyed the chaos, it felt alive. Angela, though, was juggling so many hats, mother, wife, teacher. From where I stood, she was doing an incredible job. but apparently she wanted more. "I'm not sure what that more is," she admitted one night as we were doing dishes. "I just feel like I could be achieving something else, something that uses my creative side." I handed her a plate to dry. "Like what?" she shrugged. "I'm still figuring it out." That little glimmer of restless ambition in her eyes wasn't new, but it started to intensify. When she found out a colleague was organizing a friend's wedding for extra cash, Angela was intrigued. Soon, she began devouring event planning blogs, staying up after I'd gone to sleep to pore over pictures of floral arrangements and table settings. She'd pepper me with random bits of knowledge at breakfast. "Did you know certain color palettes affect mood more than others? Like, if the tablecloth is too bright, people can actually feel anxious." I'd grin over my coffee. "Is that so? Good to know next time I go tablecloth shopping." Angela eventually tested the waters by helping Becky, an old college friend who lived nearby, arrange a small holiday party at a local community center. Becky was more adventurous, the type who dove headfirst into projects. She recognized Angela's natural knack for scheduling, decor, and anticipating people's wants. The feedback was phenomenal, with folks praising Angela for how smoothly everything ran. That tiny success lit a spark in her. Her next step was an official pivot. She left her teaching position at the end of that school year, determined to start a small event planning business. She called it Sea Breeze Celebrations, wanting to evoke a laid-back coastal vibe. I was cautious about the finances. Her stable teacher's salary was a big part of how we paid the mortgage. But Angela looked so alive, so vibrant, whenever she talked about it, that I couldn't find it in me to dampen her excitement. During those early stages, she set up a home office in the spare bedroom, the walls quickly filling with mood boards, color swatches, and pinned-up schedules. Our previously quiet nights turned into brainstorming sessions. "Maybe you should start small," I offered. "Birthday parties, local weddings build word of mouth." She nodded vigorously. "Exactly. That's the plan. I'll do a few freebies or cheap gigs, get testimonials, then scale up." I liked how methodical she was being. Angela wasn't just throwing a dart at the wall, she was developing a business plan. And while I sensed a certain risk, part of me admired her for chasing this dream. It was something I'd never done myself. I'd followed the standard path: get a corporate job, climb the ranks. Within 6 months, she had her first real wedding gig. It was for a colleague's daughter, a mid-sized event of about 100 guests. Angela poured herself into it day and night. By the time the wedding day arrived, I could see her dancing around with a clipboard, the bride smiling ear to ear, every table set precisely. Her hands shook with nerves, but she delivered. Feedback soared, pictures ended up on social media, and soon enough, her phone began ringing with more referrals. Everything seemed perfect, at least from my vantage point. Still, I started noticing a shift. Angela was always busy. During dinner, she'd be answering texts or scrolling through her phone, responding to anxious brides or vendors. I'd have to tug on her sleeve just to get her attention for a conversation, but I told myself it was normal. Entrepreneurship takes a lot of hustle. Despite the new mania in her schedule, our family life went on in relatively happy chaos. I'd pick up Jacob and Lily from preschool. Angela would come home late from consultations, and we'd juggle bedtime stories around her last-minute phone calls. We argued occasionally, but nothing major, just the usual. "Please put your phone away," or "I need you to watch the kids while I check on an email, David." Looking back, maybe that's where I first glimpsed the cracks. She seemed somewhere else, even when she was physically in the room. I'd catch her staring off, a half smile on her face, like she was dreaming of bigger and bigger projects. A lot of times she'd say, "I want Sea Breeze Celebrations to be the top in the region. Maybe expand to corporate events one day." I'd reply with a grin, "You already do so much. You sure you want more?" She'd return my grin in a gentle way, eyes shining. "I always want more." Sure, the phrase was harmless enough, but each time she said it, I wondered if more included me, or if it was a hunger that would eventually overshadow what we had. When Jacob and Lily turned 4, they were old enough to see how frequently Mommy had to race out the door. They'd ask, "Is Mommy coming home soon?" I'd reassure them, though I wasn't entirely sure how to reassure myself. Angela, for her part, insisted that she still loved them more than anything. I believed her. She never gave me cause not to. But as time went on, it was easy to sense her passions expanding beyond the house, into a world where the next big event was the only priority. My own job at the marketing agency was stable enough, giving me a comfortable schedule. I tried to be supportive, handling more childcare so Angela could build her empire. Our little team of 4 kept pushing forward, but that gnawing feeling wouldn't leave me alone. A silent question. Is she okay? Are we okay? She told me not to worry, that it was just the excitement of building something from the ground up. I'm happier than ever, she'd say. Don't I look it? And she did look happy, if you measured it by her unstoppable energy. One evening we were in the backyard, Jacob and Lily chasing each other in circles while Angela and I sat on the back steps. She mentioned a new potential corporate event that could land her a big client, some tech startup's product launch. The money would be huge, she said, and it would give Seabreeze celebrations a chance to pivot from only weddings. I remember leaning back, smiling at her. That's incredible. She grabbed my hand, her excitement like a charge in the air. It really is. I can't stop thinking about what this could mean for us, David. In that moment, I was reminded that we were still partners. Even if she'd get lost in her phone sometimes, the underlying bond remained. I believed that. She would reach for me in the dark if she had a nightmare, or I'd find her dozing off on my shoulder in the living room after an exhausting day. I saw these small gestures as proof that no matter how big her dreams, our marriage was the foundation. The months ticked by, and while I occasionally missed the simpler times, I was also proud of Angela. I'd heard a few cynics murmur, she's chasing a pipe dream, but she proved them wrong with each successful event. Family gatherings were full of relatives praising her go-getter spirit. My mom teased, David, better up your game or Angela might out-earn you soon. I'd laugh good-naturedly because I wanted her to succeed. I genuinely wanted to see her star rise, never suspecting that star might lead her somewhere I couldn't follow. Angela's sense of adventure was stoked anew when Becky, equally ambitious, suggested they attend a big hotel industry mixer in the city. We can meet owners of luxury venues, Becky explained. It's the perfect chance to pitch your brand to wealthy clients. That was where Charles Mitchell's name first crossed our radar, but to me, it was just a name. At the time, I thought, sounds like a good opportunity. I had no idea how drastically it would reshape our lives. I first heard the name Charles Mitchell on a Tuesday evening, right after I got home from work. Our dog, Pepper, was barking at me, eager for dinner, while Angela was in the living room, phone pressed to her ear. She waved at me to come in, but she kept talking in a hushed tone. Once she hung up, she turned with a bright smile. David, guess what? Becky got us into this major conference for hotel industry professionals. I set down my briefcase. That's awesome. Is that what that call was about? She nodded. Yes, and apparently a big-name hotel owner, Charles Mitchell, will be there. Becky says he's expanding his boutique chain along the coast. If we can impress someone like him, we could handle weddings at his properties or even corporate events. Admittedly, I was intrigued. I'd heard of Mitchell Hotel's small, high-end resorts that marketed themselves as exclusive experiences. I'd even seen an ad in a magazine once, but I never connected that brand to a real person. Now, according to Angela, we were about to be in the same room as him. Over dinner, we discussed the potential scope. I've done some research, Angela said between bites of her pasta. He's known for investing in unique event planners. If he finds a company he likes, he partners with them. This is a big deal, David. I was used to her excitement over potential gigs, but this felt bigger, sharper. Her eyes seemed to dance with possibility. I felt a small pinch of jealousy for what, I wasn't sure. Maybe it was a sense that something huge was taking hold of her imagination, something that might overshadow the life we had. Still, I hid that feeling behind a supportive smile. Then go knock his socks off, I said. Show him what Seabreeze can do. The next few days were busy. Angela and Becky prepped marketing material for the conference. Sleek brochures, business cards with the new Seabreeze Celebrations logo. I'd catch a glimpse of Angela in the office, rummaging around for the right color palette for her stand. She'd ask me random questions like, which do you think is better, elevating your celebration or take your event to new heights as a tagline. I'd give my input, though marketing slogans are more my domain. On the day of the conference, Angela dressed in a professional yet stylish outfit, a navy blue blazer with matching pants and a pastel blouse. Becky arrived in an equally smart getup, the two of them chattering nervously like they were about to walk a runway. I offered to drive them so they wouldn't have to deal with parking. During the ride, Becky kept flipping through their brochures while Angela quietly rehearsed her elevator pitch. I gripped the wheel and felt a pang of pride, hoping the day would be a smashing success. The conference was at a swanky downtown hotel. The atmosphere was bustling, vendors setting up displays, hotel reps chatting with event planners. I hovered around for a while, but Angela teased that I was scaring away potential clients with my anxious expression. So, with a playful salute, I left them to their booth, promising to pick them up after the show. In the car, I tried not to dwell on my weird sense of anticipation. Something about the name Charles Mitchell was stuck in my head, though I couldn't pinpoint why. Eventually, I chalked it up to my typical worry about Angela's business gambles. That night, Becky texted me that they'd run late, so I returned around 7 p.m. to find the conference hall still buzzing with people. Angela and Becky were talking to a tall, dark-haired man in a tailored gray suit. My immediate assumption, this must be the famous Charles Mitchell. She was smiling in that enthusiastic, open way she used when she believed in something wholeheartedly. Becky was more animated, gesturing toward the brochures they had on display. Charles, for his part, seemed relaxed, listening intently. I decided not to interrupt, so I observed from a slight distance. After a few minutes, the three of them laughed about something. Then Becky noticed me waiting and waved me over. Angela turned, her eyes bright. "David!" she beckoned me. "Come here!" I stepped forward, heart thumping a little. I don't know why I felt nervous, but Charles Mitchell had a presence. He looked older than us by a decade or so, maybe early 40s, with an easy confidence. "This is my husband, David," Angela introduced. Charles extended his hand. "Pleased to meet you. I'm Charles." "David," I said, shaking. "Looks like you guys are having quite the conversation." He nodded pleasantly. "Your wife here has been telling me all about Seabreeze celebrations. Impressive background. If she handles her events as smoothly as she describes, I'd be crazy not to set up a follow-up meeting." I flashed Angela a proud grin. "She's definitely talented. I can vouch for that." The four of us talked for a bit, exchanging casual remarks. I noticed Charles had a knack for making people feel special when he spoke. He directed focus onto Angela, prompting her with questions about her approach, her vision. Becky jumped in with the odd quip or statistic. The whole vibe was professional, but strangely personal. Eventually, Charles excused himself, citing another appointment. Before he left, though, he handed Angela his business card, sleek and minimalist, and said, "Let's connect soon. I'd like to hear more about your plans." After he was gone, Becky practically squealed with excitement. "We did it! He's interested!" Angela joined her in a hug, the two of them looking like kids on Christmas morning. I congratulated them, though my eyes lingered on the place Charles had just vacated. Something about the encounter left me unsettled. On the drive home, Becky wouldn't stop talking about Charles's portfolio. "He's opening another boutique hotel near the coast soon, perfect for upscale weddings. We'd be a prime partner if we can pitch a compelling package." Angela listened quietly, but with that dreamy smile. I teased them about their starstruck expressions, but inside I felt an odd twinge. The name Mitchell kept echoing in my thoughts, like an alarm in the distance. Over the next couple of weeks, Angela was busier than ever. She and Becky started drafting proposals for a partnership with Mitchell's Hotels. They collaborated on ideas for exclusive experiences that might align with his brand. Late at night, while I was half asleep, I'd hear Angela's laptop keys tapping away. She'd slip into bed after midnight, curling up next to me with a sigh, but her mind clearly still racing with possibilities. "I'm proud of you," I'd mumble, trying to be supportive, though part of me also craved just an ordinary evening where we turned off the phones and just talked about anything else, our kids, a movie, or how our days went. She'd murmur a soft thanks, and within minutes, she'd be out cold from exhaustion. Meanwhile, I was juggling marketing campaigns at my office and picking up the kids from daycare more often. I'd feed them dinner, read them bedtime stories, Angela would usually come home late, rummaging for leftover food, promising she'd tuck the kids in on the weekends instead. It wasn't a crisis, not yet, but I felt the subtle tension building. She was so laser-focused on expansion that everyday family life seemed to fade. Still, I reasoned it was just the price of building a business. We wanted financial stability. We wanted to show the world what Angela could do. Maybe once she got her foot in the door with Charles Mitchell, things would calm down and we'd find a better balance. That sense of normalcy continued to slip, though. It wasn't something you could see in broad daylight, more like a creeping shadow in the corner of your eye. An odd phone call at 10 p.m. that Angela took in the garage, or her hush-hush response to a text that made her instantly alert. "Oh, sorry, David, that's a client," she'd say. "I'll handle it quickly." Despite the weird undercurrents, I still believed wholeheartedly in her and in us. I never once suspected she might be drifting somewhere I couldn't follow. From my perspective, everything was about to pay off in big ways. "All this work will make sense soon," she often repeated, almost like a mantra. "You'll see." Little did I know that sometimes the biggest illusions are the ones we build for ourselves. 3 months after that initial conference, Angela's schedule hit a new level of intensity. Her phone buzzed nonstop with vendors, potential clients, or Becky's constant updates. Jacob and Lily, now about 5 years old, were in kindergarten, so I handled most school drop-offs and pickups. Late one evening, while I was cleaning up the aftermath of dinner, mac and cheese scattered on the floor, half-eaten broccoli on plates, Angela breezed in, face flushed with excitement. She gave me a quick peck on the cheek, hardly noticing the mess or the whining kids. "You won't believe it," she practically sang. "Charles Mitchell invited us to one of his properties for a weekend event, to see how they run their exclusive gatherings." I blinked. "Us?" She shrugged. "He said I could bring a guest, but it's more for me and Becky, obviously. It's a chance to network, learn from his team, and get a taste of how they operate." "Oh, that's—" I struggled to keep my voice neutral. "When is it?" She rattled off a date 2 weeks away. A pang hit me when I realized it fell on the same weekend as my dad's birthday party. My parents were hosting a small get-together and had specifically asked for the kids. I reminded Angela of this. She hesitated, biting her lip. "I know, but this is important, David. It could be a once-in-a-lifetime chance to secure a major deal. Besides, your dad's party is a short drive. You can still take the kids. I'll just have to send him my birthday wishes from the hotel." Something about that explanation stung, but I swallowed it. "Sure," I said. "Makes sense. We'll handle it." She gave me a look that was half relief, half guilt, but in a flash she was on the phone again, confirming arrangements. I could overhear snippets. "Yes, Charles, that date works perfectly. Becky and I are thrilled." Charles. He was no longer Mr. Mitchell. The casualness in her tone set off a small alarm in my mind, but I brushed it aside. She was in business mode, after all. The following week, I tried to share some good news from my own job, a promotion hint from my boss. But Angela was constantly preoccupied, checking spreadsheets or verifying details for the upcoming weekend. We had a rare moment together on the couch after the kids fell asleep, so I seized it. "Hey," I nudged her gently. "I think I might get that senior marketing manager position soon. My boss, Helen, said something about me being a strong candidate." "That's amazing." Angela's eyes lit up briefly. She leaned over and kissed me, but within seconds her phone buzzed again. She read a text, sighing. "Ugh, I need to handle this real quick, okay?" 10 minutes later, I was still sitting there, realizing she'd left the room to make a phone call. I felt a knot form in my stomach. We're drifting, I thought. But maybe it's just a phase. One night, I decided to address things head-on. The kids were in bed. Angela was reviewing a stack of documents at the dining room table. I approached quietly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Do you have a minute?" I asked. She glanced at me, tiredness evident in her eyes. "Sure, let me just finish typing this email." I waited. She clicked away. Finally, she looked up. "What's up?" I struggled to find the right words. "I feel like we're not connecting lately. You're so wrapped in Seabreeze and Charles's events that I—" She exhaled slowly. "David, you know how vital this stage is. If I can secure a partnership with Charles Mitchell, it could triple our revenue. It's not forever, just a crucial push." "I understand," I said, voice softer than I intended. I just miss you. I miss us. Her expression softened. Come here. She patted the chair next to her. I sat, and she reached for my hand. I miss us too. But you have to trust me. I'm doing this for our family, for a better future. Once I land a few big deals, I can scale back. I squeezed her hand, feeling slightly reassured. She had a point. I told myself this was just a busy season that we'd overcome. She was Angela, my wife, my partner. She wouldn't let her ambition overshadow the marriage we both cherished. But as the weekend of Charles's coastal event approached, I saw changes in her I couldn't ignore. She spent extra time choosing outfits, double-checking her hair. She started working out more, claiming she wanted to be in good shape for all the walking around the property. Some nights, she'd be on the phone with Becky, discussing the hotel's potential or brainstorming how to impress Charles. I tried not to let jealousy creep in, but it was an unwelcome guest in my head, whispering doubts. On Thursday night, 2 days before she was set to leave, Angela had a late phone call around 10 p.m. She took it on the back patio. I pretended to watch TV, but I couldn't focus on anything except the murmur of her voice. She re-entered the living room about 20 minutes later, looking thoughtful. I asked, "Everything okay?" She paused, then forced a bright smile. "Yeah, that was just Becky." A brief hesitation then. She wanted to confirm some last-minute stuff. I nodded even as my heart thumped harder. Right. In the pit of my stomach, tension brewed. The next day I overheard her talking to Becky again, this time in more hushed tones. Words like private consultation, great opportunity, and alone time drifted through the door. My mind spun a story that maybe Charles had invited them for some exclusive behind-the-scenes look. That was normal for business, wasn't it? Maybe I was making a mountain out of a molehill. But that sense of distance between us grew. She seemed to smile differently, laugh a bit too eagerly at messages on her phone. I tried to confront my suspicions rationally. She's building a business, David. Don't sabotage her big break with your insecurities. I believe that, at least partially. I reminded myself of how much I loved her, how we'd navigated everything together, college, kids, tight budgets. Angela wasn't the type to stray. She was determined, but she wasn't cruel or callous. Yet on Friday night, an unsettling moment occurred. I found her phone buzzing on the kitchen counter while she was upstairs putting Lily to bed. The screen lit up with a text preview. Charles Mitchell. My gut clenched. Without thinking, I read the short snippet. Looking forward to discussing details with you privately. Then the preview ended. I froze. It could have been innocent. Business talk. But that single phrase privately hammered in my brain. Angela came downstairs, found me standing there, and quickly grabbed the phone. "Oh," she said, "that's probably about scheduling. We have a lot of one-on-one consultations." She swiftly pocketed the device, avoiding eye contact. In that brief second, my world tilted. A flicker of betrayal? Or was I imagining it? "Don't wait up for me tonight," she said quietly. "I have to finalize some proposals." Then she padded off to the office, closing the door behind her. I hardly slept. The next morning, she was up at dawn, packing a small suitcase. She tried to appear casual, kissing me on the cheek, reminding me about the kids' meals. Her voice was high-pitched, almost forced with cheer. "It'll be fine," she said brightly. "I'll be home Sunday night. We can talk more then." I helped her load the car, glancing into her eyes for some sign of guilt, excitement, or doubt. I couldn't decipher it. Becky drove up, horn honking. They left with a wave, off to Charles Mitchell's oceanfront property. Standing in the driveway, I watched them disappear around the corner. A cold knot coiled in my stomach. I told myself I was being paranoid, that everything was for business, that Angela was mine. But the longer I stood there, the more uneasy I felt. It was like a subtle crack had formed between us, letting in a draft of something dark. If only I'd known just how deep that crack would become. I'm not sure what drove me there that Saturday. Maybe it was a nagging sense of unease I couldn't shake, or some half-formed suspicion stirring in my gut every time I looked into Angela's eyes. She'd left with Becky the previous day, all smiles and breezy promises. "I'll be back by Sunday night," she said. "Maybe Monday morning if we run late." I offered a supportive nod, though my mind was spinning. What if I surprised her just to see how things were going? So there I was, behind the wheel of my SUV, a bouquet of white lilies in the passenger seat. Lilies are her favorite. I can't tell you how many times I thought about turning around during that 2-hour drive. A little voice kept whispering, "This is a bad idea. Don't crowd her. She's just working." But I also remembered the distance in her smile, the late-night phone calls, the hush in her tone whenever Charles came up. My heart pounded with a nervous energy that grew stronger with each passing mile. The coastal highway was congested with weekend tourists. I inched forward in traffic, glimpsing rocky cliffs and swirling ocean waves. The property Charles had invited Angela to was rumored to have a sprawling view of the sea, some private resort he'd built for exclusive guests. I clutched the bouquet tighter each time the car inched forward, mentally rehearsing how I'd greet her. "Hey, honey, I missed you. Thought I'd bring some flowers, maybe we can grab dinner." It sounded normal in my head, but my body felt on edge. Finally, around noon, I pulled up to the entrance gate. A uniformed guard stepped out of a small booth. "Good afternoon, sir. Name, please?" "David Armstrong. My wife's here for an event." I cleared my throat. "Angela Armstrong, with Seabreeze Celebrations." He scanned a tablet, nodded politely, and then waved me through. "Guest parking is around the side. Have a nice day." The driveway curved through tall, manicured hedges until I reached a wide, circular lot. A few luxury cars were scattered about, a sleek black Mercedes, a silver Jaguar, and an unfamiliar red sports car. I glanced at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes looked tired, anxious. Still, I forced a smile. "You're here for a happy surprise," I reminded myself. "Relax." With the bouquet in hand, I found my way to the main entrance. The lobby smelled of fresh-cut roses and lemon polish. Big glass windows framed an ocean view so stunning, I almost forgot why I was there. A receptionist wearing a navy blazer offered a warm greeting. "Welcome to the Harborfield estate. Can I help you find someone?" "Yes, Angela Armstrong. She might be overseeing an event with Becky." I paused. "Or maybe she's with Mr. Mitchell." The receptionist's expression turned polite but guarded. "Mrs. Armstrong is likely on the terrace with other planners. Let me check." She made a quick call. "Yes, they're finishing a brunch reception in the Seascape Pavilion. You can head down that hallway, take a left at the large painting, then follow the corridor until you see a sign for Seascape Pavilion." "Thank you," I said, forcing a steady tone. My palms were damp around the flower's stems. As I walked, I couldn't help noticing the hushed elegance of every corner. Soft music played overhead, staff members whisked by with trays of champagne glasses, and the distant hum of conversation drifted from somewhere beyond the corridor. My stomach twisted with each step. "She's just busy," I kept telling myself. "She'll be thrilled to see you." Rounding the corner, I heard faint laughter and the clink of silverware. Then I spotted Seascape Pavilion, in a gold script on a double door. Gently pushing it open, I stepped onto a sunlit terrace. The ocean sparkled just beyond the railing. About a dozen people were milling around, some in business attire, others in more casual resort wear. They seemed to be finishing up brunch, sipping mimosas and chatting in clusters. I scanned for Angela's familiar silhouette, bouquet clutched tight. At first I didn't see her. My heartbeat thundered. Then my eyes traveled to a partially hidden alcove at the far edge of the terrace. Amid vines of bougainvillea, I glimpsed two figures. One was clearly Angela, her auburn hair bright in the sunlight, wearing that fitted navy dress she'd picked out last week. The other was a man, tall and broad-shouldered, leaning in close Charles. I took a step forward. The vantage wasn't perfect, so I shuffled around a table, trying not to draw attention. That's when the shock slammed into me. Charles had one hand resting low on Angela's waist, and she was gazing up at him with an expression so intimate it practically stole the breath from my lungs. For a second I told myself maybe it was a friendly gesture, but then he bent down and I saw their lips meet tentative at first, then deeper. I froze, mind blank. Everything around me seemed to slow, as if the world had switched to half-speed. The rustling vines, the distant murmur of ocean waves, even the other guests' chatter faded away. My entire existence funneled into that moment, Angela in another man's arms, surrendering to a kiss that radiated hunger. It was real, unmistakable. The woman I married, mother of my kids, locked in a passionate moment with Charles Mitchell, An impossible roaring filled my ears. My legs felt like they might give out. The bouquet of lilies slipped from my fingers and scattered across the terrace floor. A few guests turned, noticing me. I stood there, powerless to hide the anguish that must have been written across my face. My breath rattled in my chest, and I took one slow step backward, then another. Suddenly, Angela spotted me. Her eyes widened in terror. She wrenched herself away from Charles, panic blooming on her face. "David," she managed, voice strangled. I wanted to speak, to yell, to do anything. But my throat felt paralyzed, as if a vice gripped my vocal cords. My mind churned with betrayal, heartbreak, and a nauseating sense of humiliation. Angela tried to move toward me, but I backed away, nearly stumbling over the dropped flowers. Charles pivoted, looking startled. The casual confidence on his face vanished, replaced by shock. He muttered something I couldn't make out. Other people were staring now, the hush sweeping over the entire terrace. I could see their inquisitive faces. "What's going on? Who is this?" "David, wait!" Angela called, her voice cracking. She took a few steps toward me, arms outstretched as if that could reel me back in. I was already turning, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it behind my eyes. Everything ached: my chest, my gut, my lungs strangling for air. Without a word, I pivoted and lunged through the door, half running down the corridor. A staff member asked if I was all right. I ignored him, crashing past the elegant decor, through the lobby, out into the sunshine. It felt like I was suffocating, my skin boiling with an insane mix of rage and sorrow. "This can't be real. It can't be real," my mind chanted. But the image was burned into my vision. I reached my SUV, fumbling for the keys. My hand shook so violently I could barely jam them into the ignition. Angela's voice echoed in my head, every "I love you" we ever shared twisted now into a cruel memory. Why? Why would she do this? And with him? I started the engine and roared out of the lot, tears blurring my vision. My phone buzzed repeatedly, no doubt Angela calling. I refused to look. The shock of it all overwhelmed me, an anvil pressing on my chest. My world had just flipped upside down, and I couldn't process any of it. I turned onto the main road, adrenaline surging through me like white-hot lightning. My brain replayed that split second of them kissing, practically mocking me. Angela's face twisted in guilt when she saw me, Charles's expression of horror, and then my utter helplessness. Eventually, I pulled over on a side street because my hands were trembling too fiercely to keep driving safely. I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror, a man unrecognizable, eyes red, mouth drawn tight. A tear slid down my cheek, then another. The tears quickly turned into quiet, shuddering sobs. I was angry, heartbroken, stunned. I felt like a fool, blind to the possibility that my wife could betray me. We have kids together, a life together. We've been through so much I had to force myself to keep breathing, in, out, and out. I couldn't call anyone, not yet. My mind was too scrambled. The phone kept buzzing, but I was in no shape to talk. Minutes ticked by as I sat there, pinned under the weight of my own devastation. Slowly, my sobs died down, replaced by a numb, hollow ache. When I finally mustered the nerve to glance at the phone, I saw dozens of missed calls and texts from Angela. Each one was a dagger I refused to pull out. I tossed the phone aside. Part of me wanted to drive off a cliff. Another part demanded I go back there and confront them both. But mostly I just felt lost, like my world had abruptly gone dark. After maybe an hour, I eased back onto the road. My mind had latched onto a single plan. I need to go home. I need time to figure out what to do. The thought of seeing Angela's face again made me feel sick, but I couldn't run forever. We had responsibilities. We had kids. The kids. My God. How would we explain this to them? My eyes stung. Jacob and Lily were so innocent. They worshipped their mother. And me, I'd just discovered that everything we had might be a lie. I tried to rationalize. Maybe it was just a one-time thing. Maybe she got caught up in the moment. Or maybe... But the sight of their kiss replayed in high definition, mocking any hopeful illusions. That wasn't a casual peck on the cheek. It was passion, fire, cheating. By the time I reached my driveway, the sun was starting to dip lower in the sky. The cheerful facade of our house, a small wreath on the door, the neat flower beds Angela planted felt cruelly ironic. This was supposed to be the sanctuary we built together. Instead, it now felt like a hollow shell. I dragged myself inside, silence pressing down on every room. As if on cue, my phone buzzed again. I stared at it, heart pounding. No, I let it go to voicemail. It rang again, then a text banner scrolled across the screen. Angela, please, David, pick up. I'm so sorry. Please let me explain. The device might as well have been a viper. I couldn't handle her voice, not now. Instead, I sank onto the couch, burying my face in my hands. The heartbreak was morphing into anger, a fierce rage at her betrayal, at Charles for stepping in, at myself for not seeing any signs or not intervening sooner. My mind whirled. Should I confront her? Pack up her things? Scream at her? But I felt too emotionally wrecked to do anything except breathe. Hours crawled by. Eventually, exhaustion won out, and I fell into a fitful sleep right there on the couch. Dreams plagued me, twisted images of Angela and Charles, their faces contorting into mocking smiles, all set against the backdrop of that gorgeous ocean view. Sometime after midnight, I jolted awake to the sound of my phone ringing yet again. I stared blankly at the caller ID. Becky. For a moment, I considered answering, half hoping she'd have some rational explanation. My heart pounded as I picked up, but I couldn't find the words. I just listened. David, it's Becky. I know you're there. Please don't hang up, she said, voice trembling. Angela's a mess. She's crying, saying she never wanted you to find out like this. She told me you came by with flowers. God, David, I'm so sorry. She wants to come home and talk, but she's afraid you won't let her in. She told me to call you first. A bitter laugh bubbled up in my throat. She never wanted me to find out like this? That was her regret? The way I found out? I have nothing to say, I managed, my voice rough. Tell her not to come near me, not tonight. David. Becky's tone was pleading. There's more to the story. I hung up, heart hammering. My entire body quivered with a rage I'd never felt before. Of course there's more, I thought bitterly. But right now, I couldn't face it. Couldn't face them. Couldn't face that reality. I closed my eyes again, forcing deep breaths. My tears had dried into a dull, throbbing ache that radiated through my chest. The magnitude of it all settled in. My marriage had just shattered. My illusions were gone, and I had no idea what came next. I woke the next morning to dull sunlight creeping through the blinds and the weight of heartbreak pressing on my chest like a physical burden. My head throbbed from lack of sleep. For a few precious seconds, I forgot everything that had happened until I looked down and saw the phone in my hand, the barrage of missed calls and texts reminding me that life had taken a brutal turn. The house felt eerily quiet without the twins running around. Thank God they're at my parents' place for the weekend, I reminded myself. They'd stayed overnight with Grandma and Grandpa, so Angela could do her business trip and I could handle a project for work. Now, that small mercy was the only reason I had space to handle this crisis alone. An hour later, I heard a car pull into the driveway. My body tensed. Angela. Sure enough, I peered out the front window and spotted her stepping out, hair disheveled, face pale. She approached the door slowly. Even from inside, I sensed her anxiety shoulders tight, hand hesitant on the doorknob. The doorbell rang. For a moment, I debated not answering, but anger fused with a grim curiosity to see what she'd say. I yanked the door open. Angela looked like she'd been crying for hours. Her eyes were puffy and red. She clutched her purse in one hand, fiddling with the strap. Seeing her up close triggered a wave of fury mingled with desperate love. Why? My heart screamed. David, she whispered, voice trembling. Can I come in? I didn't move aside. Why are you here? My words cut through the silence with a coldness that surprised even me. I need to explain, Angela pleaded. Please! A bitter laugh escaped my throat. Explain what? That I walked in on you kissing Charles Mitchell? That the woman I trusted with my life has been sneaking around behind my back? She flinched like I'd slapped her. It wasn't that was the first time anything like that ever happened. I swear. Tears brimmed in her eyes again. We were talking, he leaned in, and I don't know. Stop, I snapped, stepping onto the porch and closing the door behind me so she couldn't just waltz inside. The brisk morning air stung my skin. I saw how you kissed him back. That wasn't a mistake. That wasn't an accident. She opened her mouth as if to argue, then thought better of it. "I'm so sorry," she managed, voice cracking. My rage flared. "Do you realize what you've done? Do you understand that you just destroyed everything?" I couldn't keep my voice from rising. "We have kids, a home, a life, and you threw it away for that bastard?" It wasn't like that. She was crying in earnest now, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I've been so caught up in the business, the excitement. He kept flattering me and I got confused," I scoffed. "Confused? So your lips accidentally ended up on his? Twice?" Angela let out a jagged sob. "I know. I messed up. I messed up so badly I can't even begin to make excuses. But I never wanted this to happen, David. I love you. I love our family." I wanted to shout 1,000 cruel things, to throw her words back in her face. Instead, I just stared at her, the heartbreak raw in my chest. "If you loved me, how could you let him anywhere near you like that?" She shook her head, gaze dropping. My guard was down, I guess. We'd had drinks. I was upset about something Becky said. I felt alone, and Charles was being supportive, and I made a terrible decision. "You've been so distant, and Don't you dare blame me," I growled. "You can't put this on me." "I'm not," she insisted, voice breaking. "I just want you to know it wasn't planned. It wasn't some ongoing affair. It was a mistake." She reached for my arm. "Let me fix it, please." I jerked away, stepping back. "Don't touch me." The revulsion I felt was a physical thing, roiling in my gut. My memories of them kissing replayed, fueling my anger. Right now, I can't even look at you without seeing him. She choked on a sob. "Then just can you please let me come in? We need to talk about the kids, about what happens next." A wave of nausea hit me. Jacob and Lily. Their innocent faces swam into my mind, intensifying the agony. "They're still at my parents'. They'll be fine. Go away, Angela." Desperation flickered across her face. "I'm not leaving until we talk this through, David, please. I'll wait out here all day if I have to." For a moment we stood there in a silent stalemate, tears in her eyes, rage in mine. My voice came out in a strained whisper. "There's nothing to talk about. You've done enough. Just go." Angela swallowed, lifting her chin with trembling resolve. "No, we're married. You owe me at least a conversation." I shook my head, uncertain whether to scream or slam the door in her face. But I knew she was right about one thing. We couldn't hide from this forever. My shoulders sagged. "Fine," I muttered at last, turning away from her to unlock the door. 5 minutes. That's it. We stepped inside. The living room felt claustrophobic with her presence. I stood by the window, arms folded. She perched on the edge of the couch, wiping at her tears. "David, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," she said softly, "but I want you to hear me out. After what you saw, I just about collapsed. I told Charles it was a mistake, that I never should have let it happen." I glared. How noble! My sarcastic tone seemed to cut her deep. She twisted her hands together. I felt flattered by his attention. He's been supportive of my business ideas, giving me insights and praising my work. I guess I got carried away with the excitement of building Sea Breeze celebrations. He was always there, encouraging me to push boundaries. I confused gratitude with something else. "Spare me the details," I said, my jaw tight. "What about Becky? She knew?" Angela exhaled, shoulders slumping. She suspected something might be off with how Charles and I were talking, but I never admitted it to her. "Last night after you left, she tore into me for being reckless. She told me I was jeopardizing everything. So you can hate me all you want, but don't blame Becky. She tried to keep me grounded." A hollow laugh escaped me. "Oh, trust me, I'm not blaming her. You made your own choices." She nodded, eyes glimmering with tears. "I know. And I know this doesn't fix anything, but I promise on our kids' lives it was just that one kiss. Yes, there was emotional involvement, maybe flirting, but nothing else physical happened." My mind churned. Could I even believe that? Did it matter? The one kiss was enough to break my trust. "Why should I believe you?" Angela's lips trembled. "Because you know me. Or at least I hope you did before all this. I never wanted to cheat on you. I've been losing myself in work, feeling pressured to deliver the big deals." Charles swooped in with compliments and made me feel unstoppable, like I was more than just a mom or teacher. Then it went too far. It was wrong. I'm so sorry. I stared at the floor. Part of me wanted to cling to her story, to salvage a shred of hope that this was a one-time lapse. Another part demanded I throw her out for good. "You broke us," I said at last, voice trembling. "Whether it was one kiss or 1,000, you still let him in." She started sobbing again, burying her face in her hands. The sight clawed at my heart, but anger kept me from going to her. We stayed in that tension for what felt like forever, her crying, me watching in cold silence. At length I cleared my throat. "So what now?" Angela wiped her tears, struggling to compose herself. "I don't know. I love you, David, and I don't want to lose our family. I'll do anything to make it right. Counseling, time apart, whatever you decide. Please, just don't walk away without giving us a chance." I scoffed, stepping back. "Counseling? You think a few therapy sessions will erase what I saw?" She flinched. "No, but I'm hoping, maybe, if you ever decide you can forgive me, you'll let me prove that I can be better than this." Numbness washed over me. "I need time to think," I said flatly. "Right now, I can't look at you without wanting to scream." She nodded, tears silently rolling down her cheeks. "I understand. I'll pick up the kids from my parents later," I added, my voice hollow. "For now, just go stay with Becky or check into a hotel. I don't care. I can't have you here." Angela choked on a sob, but she didn't argue. She stood, hesitating as if hoping for some last sign of mercy from me. I gave none. She walked to the door, glancing over her shoulder. "David, I'm truly sorry. I love you." Those words hit me like a punch in the gut. After a moment, I murmured, "Just go." When the door closed behind her, the silence returned, heavier than before. I collapsed onto the couch, the same spot Angela occupied just moments ago, and buried my face in my hands. I had no idea if her words were true, if it was just one kiss, if she'd truly come clean. But even if she had, the damage was done. My trust was in shreds. My anger was scorching everything in its path, including any remnants of the love we built. I sat there for a long time, letting the day slip by. My phone buzzed occasionally, likely Angela, Becky, maybe even Charles, though I doubted he had the nerve. I ignored them all. I felt alone, shredded, and I hated how a part of me still longed to hold Angela in my arms. That contradiction, my love and my wrath, threatened to split me wide open. Eventually, I stood and stared at our family photos on the mantel. There was one from Jacob and Lily's last birthday party. They wore bright crowns, Angela and I grinning beside them. A perfect family. Or so I once believed. My rage burned anew, and before I knew it, I'd snatched the frame and hurled it across the room. It hit the wall with a crack, glass shattering to the floor. I breathed heavily, blinking back tears. We can't go back. The reality crashed over me like a tidal wave. No matter how sorry Angela might be, we'd never be the same. A tiny voice in the back of my mind whispered that we might have to pretend for the kids' sake. But how could I even pretend? Collapsing onto my knees, I scooped up pieces of broken glass, each shard reflecting the fractured state of my life. I pictured Angela in Charles's arms yet again, and something inside me, some final piece of innocence, snapped. I realized I was trembling, tears spilling unchecked down my face. This was my new reality now, and I had no idea what I was supposed to do next. The next few days passed in a haze. Angela texted repeatedly, leaving long, rambling voicemails. I couldn't bear to listen to more than a few seconds of each. She was staying with Becky for now, or so she claimed, and she kept insisting we needed to talk about a plan for the kids, for bills, for everything. But I wasn't ready for those conversations. The wounds were too fresh, still bleeding. Jacob and Lily remained at my parents' house a bit longer than planned. Dad was thrilled to have the grandkids around, oblivious to the private implosion unfolding. I told them Angela's event was extended, and I had extra work, just enough of an excuse to stall picking them up. My parents didn't question it much, which was a relief. Deceiving them felt awful, but how could I explain that my wife betrayed me with some hotel mogul? Finally, on Wednesday afternoon, I drove over to bring the kids home. Jacob bounded into my arms as soon as I walked in, Lily close behind. "Daddy, you're here!" Lily squealed. They peppered me with stories. Grandpa took them fishing at the lake. Grandma let them bake cookies. Their energy and innocence contrasted so painfully with my turmoil that I almost broke down right there. Somehow I forced a shaky smile. Dad pulled me aside, eyebrows knitted. "You okay, son? You look tired." I swallowed and nodded. "Yeah, just work stress." He patted my shoulder gently, but I could see curiosity in his gaze. "You sure? Where's Angela?" She'll meet us at home," I lied. "Some last-minute planning to do." He studied me but let it go. I suspected he was worried but respected my privacy. Soon we packed the kids' duffel bags and headed off. The entire drive home, Jacob chattered about wanting to watch a new animated movie. Lily babbled about her stuffed animals. Normally, I'd engage wholeheartedly. Instead, my responses came out flat, my mind in another place. Back at the house, Lily asked immediately, "Where's Mom?" I froze. "Mom is, well, she's still working on a big project," I answered slowly. "She'll be home soon." Jacob's brow furrowed. "But she always calls us." I tried not to let my face betray the agony swirling inside me. "She's busy, buddy," I said, ruffling his hair in a half-hearted attempt at normalcy. "Why don't you two grab some snacks and we can watch that movie?" They shrugged and scampered off. House of lies. That's what we'd become. Angela was exiled from the home. I was too furious to speak to her, and our children were stuck in the middle with no clue. My chest tightened. How long could I keep up this charade? That evening, after the kids went to bed, the phone rang again, Angela. This time, I answered, stepping into the garage to avoid waking the kids. The bare light bulb above cast harsh shadows on the concrete floor. My voice came out cold. "What?" She sounded relieved I'd picked up. "David, how are the kids? Did they ask about me?" I clenched my jaw. "Of course they did. What do you think?" A shaky exhale came through the line. "I want to see them. Let me come by tomorrow afternoon." "Please." I shut my eyes, exhaustion settling over me. "Fine," I muttered. "We need to keep this normal for them, right?" "Yes," she agreed softly. "They shouldn't suffer because of my mistake. We can figure out a schedule that works until we decide what to do." I almost spat out, "What's there to decide?" We're done, but I couldn't form the words. Instead, I let out a bitter laugh. "Right, a schedule." "David," she said quietly, "I know you hate me right now, but I'm still their mother." Her words stung because they were true. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Tomorrow, 5 o'clock. Don't be late." She started to say something else, but I ended the call. My hand shook as I set the phone on a tool shelf. It felt like every moment was a new blow to the gut, fresh heartbreak layering over old anger. At times, I just wanted to pretend none of this happened. But then my mind would conjure that mental snapshot. Charles holding Angela, his lips pressed to hers. The memory never failed to ignite a surge of fury. The next day was painful in its pretense of normalcy. I helped Lily color a drawing of a princess castle, forced a smile while Jacob told a silly joke about dinosaurs, and avoided giving them any reason to suspect a storm was raging behind the scenes. By late afternoon, I'd cleaned the living room, put away any broken picture frames, and tried to plaster on a mask of calm. Angela arrived at 5 on the dot, letting herself in with her key. I stiffened as she stepped inside. She wore jeans and a plain sweater, no trace of makeup. From the kitchen, the kids squealed, "Mommy!" before sprinting over. Angela's eyes filled with tears as she scooped them into a hug, whispering how much she missed them. I hovered, arms folded, trying to keep my breathing steady. "Hey, kiddos," she said, kissing Lily's forehead. "Have you been good for Daddy?" Jacob nodded enthusiastically. "We got to stay with Grandma and Grandpa for extra days." Angela flicked her gaze to me, guilt etched in her features. "That's nice," she managed. "So what have you been up to?" They launched into excited chatter about cartoons and homemade cookies. Angela shot me a look of silent gratitude, maybe realizing I'd been covering for her. I turned away, refusing to engage. She spent the next hour with the kids in the living room, helping them with a puzzle. I lingered in the kitchen, half listening, bitterness gnawing at me. Eventually, Lily yawned, rubbing her eyes. It was near their bedtime. Jacob started getting fussy too. With forced politeness, I said, "All right, guys, say goodnight to Mom. I'll get you both tucked in." Angela's face fell, but she nodded. The kids whined for her to stay longer. She offered them a gentle smile. "Tomorrow, okay? Or the next day. We'll figure something out." Her voice trembled a bit. They hugged her goodbye, oblivious to the heartbreak in the air. Once the kids were out of earshot, Angela and I faced each other. She cleared her throat. "Thank you for letting me come tonight." "Don't read too much into it," I said tersely. "They need their mother. That's the only reason." She nodded, tears glinting. "Right. Could we maybe talk for a minute?" My whole body tensed. "I'm tired." She bit her lip. "Okay, soon, though." I just stared back. Finally, she sighed and made her way to the door. Right before she stepped out, she turned. "David, I know this doesn't fix anything, but I told Charles not to contact me anymore. I ended any professional arrangement we had. Becky's going to handle all hotel-related discussions. I swear I'm not going to see him. I just wanted you to know." I stood frozen. Part of me was relieved, part remained suspicious. "Good night," I finally murmured. She left quietly, closing the door behind her. A swirl of conflicting emotions churned in my chest. She ended things? Is that supposed to reassure me? Despite everything, I felt a small flutter of something like hope. If she truly cut ties, maybe we could salvage a fraction of normalcy. But then anger flared, reminding me that a single promise didn't erase the betrayal I'd witnessed. Hating the roller coaster in my head, I trudged upstairs to tuck the kids in, my heart heavy. Days turned into a strained routine. Angela would stop by to see the twins, either right after school or before bedtime. We barely spoke outside of quick updates about the kids. In front of Jacob and Lily, we performed a hollow imitation of our old life stiff smiles, polite small talk. The kids sensed tension. Lily asked once, "Why aren't you hugging Mommy?" My chest seized. "I'm just tired," I mumbled. "Long day." At night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My mind kept looping through the same questions. Could I live like this indefinitely? Would Angela eventually drift back to Charles? Was our marriage salvageable, or was I too broken to forgive? One evening, Becky showed up unannounced, catching me off guard after I'd just put the kids to bed. She looked uncomfortable, arms crossed over her chest, as though bracing for a storm. "David, I know you probably hate me too," she began, standing in the foyer. "But I swear I never encouraged anything between Angela and Charles. I just wanted to talk, see how you're doing." I rubbed my eyes. "I don't hate you, Becky, but I'm not exactly in a friendly mood. Angela's the one who—" She held up a hand. "I get it. Angela's choices are her own. I just want you to know that if I'd seen it coming, I would have knocked sense into her. We were at that resort for business, and it just blew up. It's not—" She trailed off, hesitating. "Charles has a reputation for mixing personal and professional. Angela wasn't the first woman he's charmed. I tried to warn her, but she was so laser-focused on success that she didn't listen." My stomach twisted at the mention of his reputation. I spat out, "Great. So my wife is another notch on his belt?" Becky grimaced. "She regrets it more than you know. She's not a bad person. She just messed up royally." A bitter laugh escaped me. "That's one way of putting it." She shifted her weight. "I'll keep Angela away from any events that involve Charles. She won't speak to him again, not if I can help it. The minute we got back, she was an emotional wreck, basically ended the partnership on the spot." I exhaled. A part of me eased by that confirmation. Another part sneered. Too little, too late. "Right." Becky studied me with a sadness in her gaze. "Look, if you need anything, call me. I don't want to see either of you destroy your entire lives, especially for the kids' sake." I could only nod stiffly. "I'll keep that in mind." She left soon after. I locked the door behind her, leaning my forehead against the wood. Destroy your entire lives. That phrase echoed in my head. Becky wasn't wrong. Already the cracks were spreading, threatening everything. Yet as I trudged up the stairs to my lonely bedroom, a flicker of harsh resolve began forming in my mind. I'm not going to let Charles or Angela or anyone else decide how this ends. If my marriage is broken, it'll be on my terms, not theirs. It was a chilling thought, one that hinted at bigger decisions. But I squashed it down, focusing on immediate survival. The twins needed at least a semblance of normal life. Angela and I had to keep up appearances, or what? We'd ruin the kids' childhood with an ugly divorce? My parents, her parents? How do we even begin to explain? For now, we lived in a fragile, unspoken agreement. Keep the peace around the kids, avoid confrontation in public, and let the rest of it fester in the dark. Every day, Angela tried to say or do something to show she was sorry, like dropping off groceries or asking if she could help with chores. I mostly shut her out, that image of her and Charles refusing to fade. The betrayal had carved a canyon in my heart, and I was the one left staring into the abyss. And so the house of lies continued. We pretended for Jacob and Lily, letting them believe Mom and Dad were just busy. At night, in the silence of my bed, I wondered if I could ever forgive, or if something else, something far darker, was forming inside me. A small voice in the back of my mind whispered that if I wanted to protect my kids from the pain of a destroyed marriage, I might have to do something drastic, something permanent. The turn from heartbreak to cold resolve happened one sleepless night about 2 weeks after I caught Angela with Charles. I'd spent hours lying in bed, replaying every moment of our relationship, from those starry-eyed college days to the soul-crushing discovery at that fancy resort. My emotions kept seesawing between sorrow, rage, and a strange emptiness that scared me more than either of the other two. When dawn finally broke, I dragged myself out of bed, feeling like a stranger in my own life. I had to go into work. The real world didn't care that my marriage was on the brink of collapse. On the way, I kept thinking about what divorce would do to Jacob and Lily. They were too young to understand infidelity, heartbreak, or the labyrinth of adult failings. All they'd see was that Dad didn't live with them anymore, or that Mom was at fault, or any number of scenarios guaranteed to scar their childhood. At the office, I stared blankly at spreadsheets, emails, pointless marketing proposals. What if we separate? What if I demand full custody? The questions swirled, none with a satisfying answer. What if I just vanish? The thought came unbidden, ridiculous. Where would I go? How would that help the kids? Another, more shocking thought intruded. If I were gone, maybe the kids could be spared the drama of a messy divorce. I shoved that aside, horrified. No, that's not an option. Yet that night, back at the house, the idea of removing myself in some form wouldn't leave my mind. Divorce felt like a betrayal of everything I'd once stood for, but living a lie seemed equally impossible. My mother's words from some old conversation echoed in my memory. Kids can survive losing a parent better than they survive a parent who chooses to leave them. She'd been talking about a friend's divorce, but now the concept burrowed into my psyche. I felt like a man possessed by two conflicting aims, protecting my children from the fallout, yet wanting Angela to feel the weight of her betrayal. As I paced the living room, I glimpsed the wedding photo on the mantel, our smiles so genuine, so full of love. How did we get here? The next morning, I scheduled a private meeting with Travis Miller, an old friend of mine who also happened to be a lawyer. He'd helped us with some will updates years ago. I arrived at his modest office under the guise of wanting estate planning advice. Travis raised an eyebrow. "Everything all right, Dave? You look like hell." I forced a short laugh. "Yeah, I haven't been sleeping, but I need to ask about hypothetical scenarios regarding my life insurance, guardianship for the kids, that sort of thing." He nodded, professional mask slipping over his features. "Sure, we can talk hypotheticals. Anything specific on your mind?" I hesitated, searching for the right words. "Let's say someone, me, was worried about leaving behind the best financial situation possible for my kids, making sure they had college covered, that kind of thing. Are there ways to ensure they get it without a messy fight with, say, a spouse?" Travis tilted his head. "This is about Angela, isn't it?" My jaw tightened. Travis knew us well enough to sense trouble. "Let's keep it theoretical." He obliged, walking me through how insurance policies typically pay out, how trust funds can be created, how to keep assets away from certain parties under specific conditions. I listened intently, scrawling notes. Despite my attempt at neutrality, Travis kept giving me concerned looks. "You need to be careful, David," he said quietly at one point. "Insurance has rules. If you do anything considered fraudulent," I waved him off. "It's hypothetical. I'm just preparing for worst-case scenarios. Like if I died unexpectedly, I don't want the kids' money tied up or lost in a big legal fight." He exhaled. "All right. But your policy might have clauses. If there's suspicion about how you died, the payout could get stalled. You'd need things to appear completely natural or accidental." A chill ran through me. Accidental. Natural. My mind spun. I forced a nod, as if this was standard conversation. Understood. After we wrapped up, Travis tried to press me for more details. "You sure everything's okay at home? Angela's not—" "Travis, we're going through a rough patch," I lied, or half-lied. "But I'm fine." He didn't look convinced, but he let it drop. As I left, a twisted seed had taken root in my head. An accident would solve everything. The kids would get insurance money, Angela would be spared the shame of a public divorce, and I'd be free from the torment of living a lie. But how? Was I really thinking about dying? Or something else? Back at the house, Angela's car was in the driveway again. She'd come to spend time with the twins. My gut churned, uncertain how to face her after the thoughts swirling in my mind. As I stepped inside, Lily ran up. "Daddy, Mommy's helping us build a pillow fort." Angela appeared in the hallway, half smiling. "I hope that's okay. We were just trying to keep them busy." I nodded stiffly. "Sure." My gaze slid from her to the kids, who scrambled back toward the living room. Part of me wanted to lash out, to say leave. You don't get to play happy family. But the other part recognized the kids were genuinely happy. Angela hesitated, then said softly, "I could stay for dinner if that's all right. Or I can go if you'd rather—" I paused. "Fine, but I'm not in the mood for conversation." She swallowed. "Okay, I understand." Dinner was excruciating. The kids chattered away about their day, Angela chiming in with questions about school. I sat mostly silent, forcing a few nods or polite remarks. Once the plates were cleared, I said I'd give the twins their baths. Angela looked torn but didn't argue. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, we both found ourselves in the hallway. Angela lingered by Lily's door, arms folded protectively. I realized her eyes were glistening. She'd been crying again, though she hid it from the kids. "David," she began, voice trembling, "I know we're stuck in this awful limbo, but can we please do something about it? Even if it's discussing separation or therapy, anything besides this constant tension?" I gazed at her hollowly, the ache in my chest intensifying. "I don't know, Angela. Every time I see you, I see him." She flinched. "I deserve that. But let's figure out a plan for the kids, at least. Hiding from them forever isn't possible." I rubbed my temple. I'll think about it." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Thank you. Good night." She brushed past me, heading downstairs to grab her purse. I listened for the soft click of the front door, then collapsed against the wall, wiping my palms on my jeans. The word plan echoed in my mind. It might not be the plan she imagined, but I'd begun piecing together something else. That night I barely slept, pacing the living room. The rational part of me insisted it was insane, but the emotional part, battered by betrayal, clung to the twisted logic that if I orchestrated a scenario where I disappeared, then no one would face the stigma of a broken family. Angela could remain the widow, the kids could keep some idealized memory of me, and the world would never know she'd cheated. At dawn, my reflection in the mirror looked haunted. I felt numb and oddly calm. This is the unthinkable decision, I realized. It's not about dying, it's about letting them believe I'm gone. A wild idea, but maybe feasible with the right steps, an accident, an insurance payout. A few days later, I called Travis again. I posed more what-if scenarios. He answered warily, probably suspecting I was dealing with more than typical estate planning. I gleaned crucial insights. If the death was ruled accidental, the policy would pay out fairly quickly, especially if there was no reason for the authorities to suspect foul play. Meanwhile, I didn't tell Angela any of it. We continued a fragile existence under one roof for the kids' sake, though she often stayed at Becky's. Jacob and Lily noticed the tension. Jacob asked if we were mad at each other. Lily asked when we'd do family games again. Each question felt like a stab, reminding me I was failing them. One late evening, Angela found me in the living room poring over old photos. She stood behind me quietly, glancing at an image of us from our college days. "You remember that weekend trip we took to the lake? How we almost tipped over the canoe?" My chest tightened. "Yeah," I said softly, the memory bittersweet. "Back then, we were unstoppable." She crouched beside me, cautious. "We were so in love, David." I exhaled shakily. "We were," I admitted, not looking at her. "I still am," she whispered. "I know I messed up, but I need you to know that I love you. Always have. Always will." Something in her tone almost made me break down. A part of me yearned to believe, to start fresh, but I couldn't unsee the betrayal. My expression hardened. "I can't do this right now," I murmured, getting up. I retreated to the bedroom, shutting the door behind me. Leaning against it, I stared at the ceiling. Her remorse, her tears, they all seemed sincere. But a single kiss had shattered my trust forever. As I lay awake, the idea of a permanent fix kept worming through my mind. Could I stage a credible accident? Could I vanish? Would it solve more problems than it created? Those questions haunted me like a drumbeat, day after day, night after night, divorce or disappearance. Neither was appealing, but one might keep my children from seeing the ugly truth. Which path would I choose? Hours later, the first hints of dawn lit up the sky. My eyes were bloodshot, jaw clenched. There's no turning back once I decide. That realization pounded in my veins. Yet despite the terror of it, I felt an odd sense of control, like I finally had a plan to protect Jacob and Lily from a lifetime of bitterness and betrayal. An unthinkable decision. But maybe the only decision left. Outside, a lone bird called into the silent morning. I stared at the faint light creeping under the door, Angela's quiet breathing audible through the thin walls. My heart thundered in my chest. Whatever happens next, I told myself, I'll make sure my children never suffer because of her choices. With that, I rose, determination settling over me like a cloak. If I was going to commit to something drastic, I needed to prepare every detail quietly, methodically. And so, the seeds of my plan took root, fueled by heartbreak, anger, and a fierce devotion to the children who deserved better than this miserable web of lies. I've always wondered if an act of revenge comes all at once like lightning striking a solitary tree, or if it grows slowly, day by day, fed by every disappointment and betrayal. In my case, it definitely wasn't lightning. It was more like a cold, creeping tide rising around my feet until I realized I was in too deep to escape. By the time I decided on my plan, it felt inevitable. The day after I spoke with Travis Miller about those hypothetical scenarios, I drove to the outskirts of town to look at a piece of property that had recently come on the market. The listing was modest, 3 empty acres near a dried-up creek bed. Nothing special for most people, but for me, it fit perfectly into the backstory I needed. A new purchase, I told myself, so I have a reason to be out there so that, if the worst happened, no one would question why I had gone to that remote area. I met the realtor, a chatty woman named Alice, who guided me through a gate that squeaked on rusted hinges. She wore a bright floral blouse and introduced herself with too firm a handshake. "I'll be honest," Alice said. "Most folks pass on this land, but I appreciate your interest. What do you have in mind?" I forced a friendly grin. "Just exploring options, maybe a weekend retreat for my family." I swallowed the sour taste in my mouth, thinking about Angela, about how we'd never again be a real family in the way I once believed. Alice launched into a sales pitch. "The soil's not ideal for large-scale farming, but you could build a small house or cabin. With some work, it could be nice. Want to walk around?" "Sure." I trudged with her through the brittle grass, listening with half an ear as she pointed out property lines. My real focus was the road leading here, a snaking, lonely highway with low traffic. If a driver lost control out here, it might take a while for anyone to find them. As we headed back to our cars, I inquired casually about local maintenance and emergency response. Alice shrugged. "There's a volunteer fire station about 10 miles north, and an old ranger outpost near the reservoir, but that's it." Perfect, I thought. If I vanish on this lonely highway, an accident might look believable. The idea curdled my stomach, but I pressed on. I told Alice I wanted to move forward. She lit up at the prospect of a sale. Before leaving, I asked her to keep quiet about my interest until we had paperwork set. She seemed puzzled but didn't protest. That afternoon, I drove straight to Travis's office. He'd promised to help me finalize some legal documents for a property purchase. We hammered out details for a small down payment, enough to make it look serious but not enough to drain my savings. I needed the rest of my funds intact for other arrangements. At one point, Travis paused, pen hovering over a form. "You sure about this, David?" "Yes." "The cost might be steep for land you're not even certain you want to develop." I gave a half smile. "I'm sure," I lied. "I feel like I need a getaway for me and the kids." He studied me a moment but continued signing. The plan was in motion. Step 1, create a plausible reason for me to be on that remote highway. Step 2, ensure my life insurance would remain valid. Step 3, craft an accident narrative so nobody would question it, especially not Angela. That evening, I was in the garage rummaging for an old box of tools when my phone buzzed. The screen read, "Unknown caller." Usually, I'd ignore a call like that, but something told me to pick up. The voice on the other end was hushed, familiar. "David?" I froze. "Wendy?" Wendy used to work for Charles Mitchell. I'd seen her only a handful of times, but I recalled her as meticulous and kind of guarded. Angela once told me Wendy had warned her about mixing business with Charles's personal life. Turned out Angela didn't heed that warning. "Yeah," Wendy said quietly. "Look, I wasn't sure if I should call, but Becky gave me your number. I heard some things." Heat flared in my chest. "What things, exactly?" "That you discovered Angela with Charles." She paused, maybe waiting for me to confirm. When I said nothing, she continued, "I'm so sorry. Charles has a track record of seducing people he works with. I warned Angela, but—" I exhaled sharply. "Yeah, well, it happened. Too late to worry about warnings." Wendy hesitated. "I left Charles's employ a few weeks ago. He's not happy, but I couldn't stomach his manipulative behavior anymore. I want you to know I never supported anything between him and Angela." I rubbed my forehead, the sting of betrayal still raw. "Why are you telling me this now?" Her tone dropped. "Because I've seen how Charles discards people, and I'm worried. Angela's departure from the partnership has made him vengeful. He's trying to sabotage Seabreeze celebrations behind the scenes, bad-mouthing Angela, cutting her off from vendors. I just felt you should know, if you can warn her or help her, or maybe you don't care." My heart twisted. I didn't want Angela's business to collapse. That would only hurt the kids, and ironically, hurt me through them. But it was also hard to muster sympathy for her after what she'd done. "Why tell me? She's the one who messed up." "I know," Wendy said softly. "Still, if Charles keeps pressing, it might get uglier. Just be cautious." A pause lingered. Then I found myself saying, "Wendy, can we meet? I'd like to get more info about Charles, about how far he goes when he's angry." She agreed. We settled on a coffee shop off a quiet highway the next afternoon. After we hung up, I stood there in the garage, phone in hand, feeling the strange rush of setting up a new piece of my puzzle. Maybe she had no role in my revenge, maybe I just needed all the facts. But something told me Wendy could be an ally, or at least confirm if Charles was as ruthless as I suspected. The coffee shop was an out-of-the-way spot, the kind with mismatched chairs and local art on the walls. Wendy arrived before me, wearing a gray hoodie and jeans, blonde hair tied back. She looked more tired than I remembered. When I slid into the seat across from her, she offered a wobbly smile. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, sipping her latte. "I didn't know who else to tell." "No problem." I ordered a black coffee. "So, tell me about Charles. I know he's a predator, but how dangerous?" She glanced around as if worried someone might overhear. "He can be vindictive, especially with ex-partners. He's powerful, has connections at City Hall, with local business groups. After I left, he threatened to ruin my reputation if I said anything about what I'd seen. Told me he'd sue me for breach of contract. But mostly he's just petty. With Angela, I suspect he's trying to ruin her professional credibility." My stomach tightened. Angela had her own cross to bear. She'd betrayed me. but she was still the mother of my children. I didn't want them watching her livelihood crumble. That lines up with what Becky mentioned. Wedding clients mysteriously pulling out, vendors doubling their rates. She thought it was a coincidence. I guess not. Wendy nodded grimly. No coincidence. Charles puts his staff or buddies up to it. Underthittable deals. He's basically punishing her for rejecting him. I swallowed hard. The word punishing buzzed in my head. I knew all about wanting to punish Angela. My entire plan was built on vengeance. But hearing how Charles used his resources to systematically destroy people made me even more determined to carry out my own solution. At least my method would be swift, not drawn out. The conversation drifted to random anecdotes. Wendy recalled how Charles had once demanded she spy on an event planner he suspected of disloyalty. She refused, which caused tension leading to her resignation. He has a twisted need for control, she concluded. But if you're meeting with me to get revenge on him, I can't help you. I'm out. Her bluntness startled me. I'm not asking you to sabotage him. I just want clarity on what he might do next. She folded her arms. Then you have it. He'll keep pressuring Angela's business. If that fails, he might move on and find another target. He's got a short attention span unless someone escalates the feud. For a second, I almost told her about my plan. About how I intended to end this entire fiasco in a way that left both Angela and Charles behind forever. But I kept quiet. Thanks for the info, I said softly. If anything changes, call me. She hesitated, gazing at me with an odd mix of concern and curiosity. David, be careful. People don't always think clearly when they're hurt. A small, sad smile tugged at her lips. Trust me, I've seen it. I gave a curt nod. I know what I'm doing. We parted ways. Driving home, my mind buzzed with Wendy's words. Charles is petty and vengeful. He'll eventually move on. That might be good for Angela, but it didn't erase my own rage or heartbreak. My plan wasn't about Charles alone. It was about the entire betrayal and the kids' future. I wanted to leave behind a storyline that spared my children from a nasty divorce, an accidental death, a life insurance payout, no public shame or custody battles. For me, it was the only path that made sense, no matter how drastic. That night, I stood in the bedroom where I used to sleep beside Angela. She was gone sleeping at Becky's place, or maybe home late from trying to fix her business. I didn't know. My reflection in the mirror looked haggard, eyes rimmed with sleepless circles. A note of finality hung in the air as I packed a small duffel bag with clothes I rarely wore. Old jeans, battered sneakers, a couple of shirts. In my top drawer, I found a family photo. Me, Angela, Jacob, Lily, all smiles from a beach vacation last year. My hand trembled. Can I really leave them behind? The agony in my chest nearly buckled my knees. But I remembered the bitterness in Angela's eyes after I discovered her secret. I pictured the court battles for custody if we divorced, the tears on the kids' faces, the pain. Then I imagined them grieving a father lost in an accident, painful, yes, but simpler in the long run, at least from a child's viewpoint. My plan felt monstrous and merciful all at once. I gently placed the photo back in the drawer. Focus, David, I told myself. No second thoughts. In the days that followed, I finalized each detail. I visited the property again with the realtor, paying just enough earnest money to secure it under my name. I told Angela and the kids in passing that I was exploring some land for a potential project. Angela barely reacted. Her mind was on damage control for Seabreeze celebrations. Jacob seemed curious, but Lily was more interested in a school art show. To them, it was just another grown-up chore. At the same time, I called my insurance agent, updating some details in my policy. Phrasing it as part of the property purchase, I claimed I wanted to ensure adequate coverage if something happened while developing the land. The agent didn't suspect a thing, happily adding clauses that made sure my family would be well taken care of if I died in an accident. The premium increased slightly, but I didn't care. Every dime will go to Jacob and Lily when all is said and done. The final piece involved forging small bits of paperwork to make my finances look squeaky clean. I kept a record of everything, lodging it in a safety deposit box so no one would question the timeline of my interest in the property. If the cops ever looked into it, they'd see a man genuinely planning a rural getaway. No sudden or suspicious changes. It was a Monday afternoon when the entire scheme crystallized. I sat alone in my car in a quiet parking lot, scanning each file in the folder on my lap. Property documents check, insurance updated check, will revised check. My heart hammered so loudly I almost expected to see it beating through my shirt. The next steps were grim. Stage a lethal crash. My mind had latched onto that phrase, fatal accident, though the word fatal turned my stomach. Still, I reminded myself I wouldn't truly be dead, just gone. A swirl of guilt churned within me. What if the kids hate me someday for leaving? But better they believe I had no choice, that a tragic accident stole me away, than to watch us tear each other apart in a divorce. My love for them felt twisted but unwavering. Yes, this is right, I convinced myself. Late that night, a text lit up my phone. Angela. Hey, can we talk about the kids' schedule tomorrow? I stared at it for a long while, then typed back, we can talk after dinner. No mention of anything else. She simply replied, okay. I realized that tomorrow might be one of the last normal nights I'd spend with my children. The thought tightened my throat. I could already feel the goodbye, the finality. Yet my rage at Angela, my heartbreak, fueled me onward. She'd forced my hand in a way by betraying everything we had. This was my solution, my twisted retribution. She'd live with the guilt of my death, while the kids were spared the shame of her actions. Standing in the dim kitchen, I mentally replayed the steps of my plan for the 100th time. I'll do this soon. In a week? Maybe 2? No, can't wait too long, someone might sense something. My eyes landed on an old magnet on the fridge that Lily made in preschool. It read Family Forever in shaky crayon letters. My heart clenched. Maybe forever just looks different than we imagine. I flicked off the kitchen light and headed to bed, steeling myself for the final preparations. The clock on the microwave read 12:03 a.m. In a matter of days, maybe a week, my life would change beyond recognition. I closed my eyes, letting the cold hush of the house seep into my bones. No turning back now. The strangest part about planning your own disappearance is how ordinary everything else seems on the surface. While my mind churned with twisted details, where to crash, how fast to drive, how to ensure no chance of a real fatality, my daily life went on. Work deadlines, grocery runs, even that awkward small talk with neighbors about the weather. Each mundane interaction felt surreal, like I was performing a role in a play no one else knew about. One afternoon, Jacob came bounding up to me with a big grin, waving a piece of paper. Dad, my class is doing a science fair. I'm building a model volcano. I need your help. His excitement was contagious, momentarily piercing the numb shell I'd built around myself. A volcano, huh? I managed to smile. Sure, buddy. We can grab supplies from the craft store. He beamed, dragging me to the kitchen to show me a rough sketch. In that moment, my chest ached with a fierce love. This is what I'll miss most. The realization almost made me abandon the plan right then. Stay, fight for your kids. But then I pictured Angela's betrayal again. My anger roared back, reminding me how a standard divorce or open warfare would tear our children's lives apart. I forced the pang down, focusing on Jacob's excitement. That evening, after Lily finished painting a cardboard castle and Jacob tested his vinegar and baking soda eruption, I suggested an impromptu ice cream outing. Let's go, just the 3 of us. Angela had texted earlier, saying she wouldn't be home until late. Perfect. She wouldn't notice or question my emotional state. We drove to a small ice cream parlor near the park. The kids chattered about flavors. Lily wanted mint chocolate chip. Jacob wanted cookie dough. I ordered a simple vanilla, my appetite overshadowed by the knowledge that time was slipping through my fingers. We sat at a picnic table outside, the sun dipping low, casting orange and pink streaks across the sky. The kids giggled over silly jokes, and I forced myself to laugh with them, memorizing every detail. Lily's pink sneakers swinging under the table, Jacob's ice cream dripping down his chin. At one point, Jacob looked up at me, brow furrowed. Dad, are you okay? You seem kinda sad. My heart lurched. Kids sense everything. I'm just tired, buddy. Grown-up stuff, you know? He considered that, then nodded. You can get some rest. Lily and I can wash the dishes tonight, right, Lil? Lily grinned. Yeah, we can, Dad. It'll be easy. I mustered a smile, ruffling their hair. "You guys are the best." We finished our treats and headed home. As the kids scurried to the sink to attempt washing dishes, I hovered in the living room, shoulders tense. A swirl of guilt and dread threatened to bury me. I wanted to freeze time, keep them at this age, safe from heartbreak, but my solution demanded a permanent step. Soon, I reminded myself. A few more days of normal later that week, Angela arrived home earlier than usual, around dinner time. She wore a tired expression, carrying a couple of shopping bags. "I grabbed groceries," she said, setting them on the counter. "Needed to restock the fridge." I nodded, not meeting her eyes. "Thanks. Kids already ate." She fiddled with a tomato in the bag. "Everything okay? Becky told me you seemed distant when she came by the office to drop something off." Becky occasionally acted as a runner between me and Angela if we had logistics to coordinate. "I'm fine," I replied curtly. "Just a lot on my mind." Angela watched me for a moment. "David, if there's something—" She paused, inhaling slowly. "I know we're not in a good place, but we're still living under the same roof sometimes. Shouldn't we communicate better for the kids' sake?" My anger flared. "For the kids' sake," I echoed. "Like you worried about that when you—" I cut myself off, swallowing a tide of bitterness. "I've said it before, let's keep it civil in front of them. That's all we need to do right now." She clenched her jaw. "I'm trying. I hate this tension. I miss—" She trailed off, then exhaled. "All right, I'll let you be." Over the next hour, I heard her in the living room helping Lily with homework, laughing at Jacob's jokes. The sound grated on me, her laughter, her attempt to slide back into normalcy. Meanwhile, I was upstairs in the bedroom stuffing a final handful of clothes into a gym bag. My mind reeled with the knowledge that soon I'd be gone, leaving her with a life that looked stable on the outside but was hollow inside. A part of me savored that image, an ironic payback for her betrayal. The next day, I got a call from Becky. Her tone was subdued. "Angela's worried about you, David. She said you seem off, more than usual." I scoffed into the phone. "I'm not her concern anymore, Becky. Unless it's about the kids, she doesn't need to worry." A pause. "Are you sure you're okay, though? You sound I don't know. There's something in your voice that's scaring me." For a moment, I almost confided in her, but I caught myself. "I'm just dealing with a lot. Work, kids, the usual." She sighed. "All right. Look, you might hate me for saying this, but Angela does seem genuinely remorseful. She's juggling her failing partnership, our wedding clients dropping out thanks to Charles, and the guilt over what she did to you. I know it's not your job to care, but if you're planning something rash—" I cut her off, bristling. She should have thought about that before hooking up with Charles Mitchell. Silence. Then Becky replied softly, "I get it. Just promise me you won't do anything that hurts your kids." My knuckles tightened on the phone. "I'd never hurt them," I said through gritted teeth. "They're all that matter to me." She seemed mollified. "Fine. If you ever need a friend, I'm good," I snapped, ending the call. My heart pounded, Becky's words echoing in my mind. "Don't do anything that hurts your kids." Little did she know that my entire plan revolved around protecting them from the ugliness of this betrayal. If only she could see inside my head. That weekend was the final calm before the storm. Angela had some out-of-town errands for her business, so I used that as a chance to stage a special day with the twins. Saturday morning, I took them to the park, pushing Lily on the swing until her laughter filled the air and helping Jacob practice basic soccer drills. We grabbed hot dogs from a street vendor, then devoured them on a bench overlooking a duck pond. Jacob squinted at me, a ketchup smear on his cheek. "Dad, you're smiling a lot today." I blinked. "I am?" "Yeah," Lily chimed in. "You usually seem sad lately." She took a bite of her hot dog. "But today you look happy again." A bittersweet ache filled my chest. I forced a grin. "I guess it's a good day with you two." They grinned back, oblivious. We stayed in the park until dusk, throwing a frisbee, feeding bits of our leftover bread to the ducks. I wanted to freeze every second, capturing the final memory of me as a present father. My eyes misted when Lily hopped on my back for a piggyback ride, giggling in my ear. This is what I'm giving up, I thought, so they can stay shielded from a messy war at home. That night, after I tucked them in, I hovered by their bedroom door, listening to the quiet hush of their breathing. My heart hammered with grief and resolution. I'm sorry, Jacob. I'm sorry, Lily. They'd hate me if they knew the truth, but I preferred that to them witnessing a broken family. Back in my room, I thumbed through the final copy of the changed will. Travis had seamlessly updated it so the kids got everything, with Angela named as caretaker of the funds until they turned 18. I'd nearly insisted she not have direct control, but that would raise suspicions. So I let it stand, trusting that she'd handle their finances responsibly. After all, she was still their mother. She'd do right by them, even if guilt consumed her. A few days later, I caught Angela eyeing me from the kitchen. She finally spoke up, voice tentative. David, you've been quiet but kind of peaceful lately. Did something happen? I shrugged, refusing to meet her gaze. Just realized there's no point in dragging out negativity. It was as close to truth as I'd give her. She didn't need to know I was leaving soon, in the most permanent way possible. She fiddled with a dish towel. I'm glad you're calmer. Maybe it's a sign we can figure out a path forward. Something in me snapped at the thought that she believed we could ever repair this. Path forward? There's only one path I see. But outwardly, I kept my composure. We'll see, I said noncommittally, then turned away. That night, I lay in bed, finalizing the timeline in my head. The accident would happen in just a couple of days. I would drive out to the property under the guise of checking boundary markers. I'd pick an isolated stretch of road. The next steps were grim, but I'd already rehearsed them so many times, it felt mechanical. No second thoughts, no mercy. This was it. Staring at the ceiling, I let out a shuddering breath. In 2 days, I'll cease to exist in this house. Angela would remain, forever haunted by the heartbreak she caused. The kids would cry, but they'd move on eventually. They'd remember a father who died tragically, not a father who loathed their mother or fought with her in court. Yes, that's how it has to be. Sleep came in fits, nightmares swirling, but each time I jolted awake, heart racing, I reminded myself the plan was set, unstoppable. I pictured the swirl of white lilies I'd once carried to surprise Angela at Charles's property. How they'd fallen from my hands when I caught her in the act. A twisted omen, perhaps. Now I was about to end the story on my own terms, my final days at home, unraveling into a carefully plotted farewell. When dawn broke, I rose to get the kids ready for school, heart heavy with the knowledge. Only a little longer until I vanish forever. The morning of my supposed business trip started unremarkably. I woke early, threw on jeans and a plain shirt, and carried my small duffel bag downstairs. The kids were still asleep. Angela had decided to do a half day at home, possibly because she sensed my tension. I was grateful for that. I didn't want a drawn-out goodbye. In the kitchen, she sipped coffee, glancing at me curiously. You're leaving pretty early. I forced a casual shrug. I have a long drive. You know that property I mentioned buying? I want to check a few details with the realtor and get some boundary measurements. She frowned slightly. You never told me you closed on it. I didn't want to jinx it, I lied smoothly. But yeah, it's basically mine. Big step, I guess. She watched me, eyes flicking to the duffel. When will you be back? Probably tomorrow afternoon, I replied. Don't worry, I'll text if anything changes. She hesitated, then set down her mug. David, can we talk for a second? Her voice held an unsteady note. My heart lurched. Don't do this now. I really have to go. The realtor's waiting. Angela stood. I get it. I've been thinking. I know you said we'll see about our future, but I need you to know I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Therapy, counseling. I'll sell my business if you want me to. Anything. Bitterness flared in my chest. Too late. But outwardly, I just pressed my lips into a thin line. Let's talk when I get back, I said, trying not to tremble with the finality of it. We'll figure something out. Her eyes shone with emotion, but she nodded. Okay, safe drive. Grabbing my duffel, I stepped toward the door. A sudden urge seized me to say goodbye to the kids, but that would cause suspicion, too much emotion. Instead, I forced myself to walk out quietly. My heart hammered so violently I thought I might faint. This is it. Out on the road, the sky was still tinged with pink. I took the interstate for the first hour, passing early commuters. Then I veered onto the smaller highways, the ones that wound toward that lonely property. A tightness coiled in my gut as each mile marker passed. My thoughts churned. No second thoughts, no going back. The plan was set. Eventually, I reached a desolate stretch with sparse traffic. Hills rose on either side, dotted with scraggly bushes. I pulled over, breath ragged, to prepare. My hands shook violently as I opened the trunk. Inside was a small can of gasoline. Don't dwell on it, I told myself. I had the simple but terrifying idea. Create enough confusion at the crash site so nobody questions the details of my death. Maybe a bit of fire. The risk was high, but I needed the scene to look too grim to find a body easily. They'll assume I burned beyond recognition. Dental records, maybe. But if it's hot enough, the logic made me feel sick. I'd rehearsed it, but now, standing on the dusty roadside, I nearly retched. This is monstrous. But heartbreak and desperation fueled me on. I took a moment to calm my trembling limbs. Do it for your kids, I repeated like a mantra. Spare them a lifetime of battles. I got back in the car, driving until I spotted the narrow bend near a rocky ravine. A perfect spot if I skidded off the shoulder at the right angle. The car would tumble far enough that passers-by might not notice immediately. The thought set my heart pounding anew. I continued a mile further, scouting vantage points. Nobody else on the road right now. The sun crept higher, intensifying the desert-like heat. Time to set the scene. I called the realtor's voicemail, leaving a message. Hey, it's David Armstrong. I'm on my way, but might be delayed car trouble. I'll call you when I get closer. That message would place me on this road at roughly this time, reinforcing my story. Steeling myself, I found a deserted pull-off. I set the phone to record a short voice memo, something about hearing a weird noise under my hood. Then I let the phone fall to the passenger seat. I checked the seatbelt, making sure everything looked normal. With a shuddering breath, I accelerated. Adrenaline roared through me as I neared the bend, my heart hammered, sweat breaking out along my forehead. This is it. Don't hesitate. I wrenched the wheel abruptly, aiming for the shoulder, pressing the accelerator to feign lost control. The car lurched violently, tires squealing, and a surge of panic flooded me despite my planning. Focus, damn it! The front wheels dipped off the road, the slope dropping away beneath me. Everything jerked sideways. For a split second, I lost sense of up or down. Rocks bashed the undercarriage, glass cracked. I heard my own scream choked off in my throat. The seatbelt bit into my chest. In that chaos, I had just enough presence of mind to think this better be convincing. Then my head slammed against the steering wheel. Darkness, swirling shapes, excruciating pain. I couldn't tell how long I was out, or if I was fully conscious. My ears rang. Smoke stung my nostrils. The battered car lay partly on its side. I forced my eyes open. Blood dripped from my forehead. The plan had been to exit quickly before any flame spread. But it was all so disorienting, and a primal terror seized me. Move, David, move! Gasping, I fumbled for the door handle, praying the frame hadn't warped too badly. It groaned, but finally gave. I stumbled out, knees buckling on rocky ground. The rear of the car was crushed against a boulder, the front end smoking. My chest heaved, every limb shaking. Gaskin, did it survive? My vision blurred, but I spotted it rolling near the trunk. Summoning the last of my will, I crawled over, ignoring the throb of pain in my ribs. I flicked the spout open, splashing gasoline onto the wreck. The stench assaulted my senses. That's enough. Then, with trembling hands, I pulled out a lighter from my pocket, my father's old Zippo. A surge of madness gripped me as I flicked it. The small flame danced in the wind. No going back. I tossed it onto the soaked area near the trunk. Flames leapt to life instantly, heat roaring. I staggered backward, panic seizing me. The plan said I'd slip away, but the intensity was overwhelming. Fire crackled, thick black smoke billowing. I coughed, stumbling around the side of the car to hide behind some scrub brush. Moments later, a small explosion rocked the air, likely the fuel line igniting. My body hit the ground, dust in my mouth. That'll do it, I thought, half delirious. The blaze soared, an orange inferno. Any remains or evidence would be consumed, leaving only a battered shell. I forced myself up, every muscle protesting. My head spun. Gotta get away, gotta vanish before anyone arrives. I stumbled further into the brush, adrenaline warring with searing pain. Another explosion rattled me, scalding the skin on my arms. Stop looking back. Keep going. My foot caught on a rock, sending me sprawling. Firelight flickered across the ground, dancing in my peripheral vision. Blood trickled down my temple, dizziness threatening to pull me under. For a moment, I pictured Jacob and Lily, their bright smiles. "I'm doing this for you," I croaked, voice raw, tears mixing with sweat. Everything grew blurry, thick with the smoke and swirling dust. "Move, David, move!" And then I collapsed against the rocky slope, darkness swallowing me whole. It feels like I'm suspended underwater, every sound muffled and distant. Glimpses of the wreck swirl in my mind, orange flames licking the sky, black smoke curling into the wind. Pain throbs in my head, ribs, everywhere. I don't know how long I drift in that half-conscious state. I recall a sharp beeping sound, maybe a siren, a voice shouting. I can't piece together the words. Darkness reclaims me. A swirl of sensations, rough hands, the crunch of gravel underfoot, a distant roar. My body lurches. Another wave of darkness. Angela is at home when the call comes from a highway patrol officer. She's half arguing with Becky about an upcoming event, exhaustion pulling at her features. The phone rings and Angela answers, expecting maybe me or the realtor. Instead, a calm, official voice says, "Is this Mrs. Angela Armstrong? Ma'am, we've located a vehicle registered to David Armstrong, involved in a serious crash. We need you to come to—" They don't say fatality at first. They only say the car is destroyed, heavily burned, no occupant found. The dash cam from a passing truck caught a glimpse of the fiery wreck. Soon, local authorities search the site, stunned by the intensity of the flames. The VIN matches my sedan. Angela drops the phone, trembling. Becky picks it up, tries to speak. Angela's eyes fill with terror. Angela arrives at the crash site, sees only charred metal and the acrid smell of smoke. Highway patrol officers keep her back. They suspect the worst, maybe the occupant was incinerated or flung clear. No one's sure. A search party combs the nearby brush for any sign of a body. They find blood, footprints, but no living person. Angela's mind spirals. Could he be injured, wandering, or dead? She calls Travis, frantic. He rushes to the scene, to the hospital, anywhere David could be. But no hospital has admitted me. No paramedics have found me. Helicopters scan the area. Nothing. Some officials suspect I was ejected or consumed by the fire. Angela refuses to believe it. She paces, sobbing, pressing them to keep looking. Jacob and Lily stay with my parents, shielded from the immediate horrors. My mother gets a shaky call from Angela. "There's been an accident. We can't find David." My dad demands answers, shaking with fear and confusion. My mother collapses onto a chair, tears streaming. The kids sense something is wrong, but the adults dodge their questions. A hush falls over the household. Angela returns to the site day after day, tearful, desperate. After 72 hours, authorities confirm there's no sign of me. All that remains is a twisted frame, scorched beyond recognition. They gather scraps of clothing that might be mine. The possibility that I burn to ash is horrifying yet plausible. Angela breaks down, guilt crushing her. She calls Becky repeatedly, wailing that it's her fault she pushed me away. She should have told me not to go alone. Charles Mitchell's name flits through her mind, but she can't even muster anger at him now. She's hollow with grief and shame. Travis, seeing no chance of my survival, advises Angela that they should hold a service. The kids are told gently that Daddy's car crashed. They cry, confused. Where's his body? Grown-ups speak in hushed tones about no remains to bury. Angela arranges a small memorial at a local chapel. Family and friends gather wearing black. Becky sits in the front row, eyes wet, shaking her head. The kids cling to Angela's side. My mother dabs her eyes with a tissue, trembling. My father looks like he's aged a decade overnight. People step up to share memories. How I was a great dad, a loyal friend, the first to volunteer help. Angela stands, voice quivering, talking about how I was the love of her life, and that she failed me in some ways. Hushed confusion stirs among the guests. Nobody knows the full story, just rumors that we'd had marital issues. But Angela's heartbreak is undeniable. She collapses into sobs, and my mother leads her off the podium. Jacob and Lily just stare, quiet tears on their cheeks. They don't fully grasp that I won't walk through the door again. Angela kneels, hugging them both, apologizing for something they can't comprehend. The entire chapel is thick with sorrow. Travis takes Angela aside, delivering a sealed letter. "David gave me this months ago," he explains, voice husky. "Told me to give it to you if something ever happened to him." Angela's hands shake as she accepts the envelope, eyes reddened from weeping. Becky hovers near, offering silent support. In the letter, I've written some carefully chosen words, nothing that reveals my plan. Just a final note that frames the story of my property purchase and my hope to provide for the kids. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I'm sorry, Angela. Please tell Jacob and Lily how much I love them. The letter is brief but pointed, referencing the property as if it was a passion project I died pursuing. Everything you need is in the updated will and insurance. Make sure they have a good life. Angela sobs over the letter, guilt gnawing her from within. She shares bits of it with Becky, who reads it with tears in her eyes. Travis stands by, stoic, aware that everything is happening as I instructed. He never breathes a word of suspicion, fulfilling the promise he made to me months ago. Speculation arises among acquaintances. A few folks whisper, "Was it suicide?" Others, unaware of the tension, call it a tragic accident. The official police report states, "Driver likely lost control, causing the vehicle to roll and catch fire. Excessive damage led to incomplete recovery of remains." They close the case with a quiet sense of pity. Angela withdraws. She rarely sleeps, barely eats. Becky tries to coax her back to daily tasks, but Angela is haunted by my final letter. She rereads it, searching for clues. Why mention wanting a getaway for the family if we were so broken? Did he suspect something might happen? She torments herself with unanswerable questions. Jacob and Lily wrestle with nightmares, asking to sleep in Angela's bed. She obliges, holding them tight, tears slipping silently as they drift off. My parents shuffle around their house in a daze, refusing to accept they'll never see me again. For a moment, a hush settles over the household. No fights, no arguments, only a grief-laden calm. The kids are told Daddy's accident was terrible, while Angela shoulders the blame in her heart, though she can't speak it aloud. The life insurance claim is filed. Travis assures Angela it's straightforward, given the official accident report. Each day, fresh sympathy cards arrive. Old friends, neighbors, even colleagues from my marketing firm who can't fathom how I ended up in such a tragic crash. Angela thanks them softly, exhaustion etched on her face. Becky or Travis handle most of the logistical details, bank forms, estate transfers, so Angela can focus on caring for the children. Meanwhile, from David's fading POV, my final recollections from the crash site swirl in darkness. The screech of metal, the roar of flames, the smell of gasoline. Then everything fractures into black. But that's all I know. No mention of what came next belongs here. My story, as far as they're concerned, ends with sirens, a blazing wreck, and a funeral service where my ashes are presumed scattered among the twisted metal. Thus, the official narrative is complete. David Armstrong died in a tragic car accident. Angela is left to grieve and manage the pieces of our fractured life. Jacob and Lily mourn a father they believe is gone forever, never suspecting the deeper truth. Charles Mitchell goes on with his existence, probably baffled that the man he once wronged has vanished from the stage. The world moves forward, carrying the heartbreak in its wake. In everyone's eyes, my revenge is sealed Angela's guilt, my children's heartbreak. A life ended on a lonely highway. The seeds I planted ensure a sizable insurance payout for the kids, overshadowed by the tragedy. The local press runs a small obituary. The Armstrongs receive condolences. No one suspects that part of me might still draw breath somewhere far away, that the story is not entirely over. But for them, for now, this is the end. I don't know how long I drifted in and out of consciousness after the crash. At some point, it felt like my entire world was nothing but a blur of pain and darkness. I recall moments scorching heat behind me, my lungs rasping for air, a sting in my ribs every time I inhaled. Then it all vanished. When I finally came to, there was nothing but quiet. I found myself lying on a narrow cot in a dimly lit space, the walls made of rough-hewn wood. At first, my eyes refused to focus. Every shape was a hazy shadow. A harsh ache radiated through my skull, and my chest felt like someone had taken a jackhammer to it. I tried to speak, but only a ragged croak emerged. A figure shifted nearby, silhouetted by a single lamp. The smell of disinfectant stung my nose. Fear pounded in my veins. Am I in a hospital? Did someone rescue me after the crash? Will this ruin my entire plan? I forced my eyes to stay open, blinking rapidly to clear my vision. As the figure approached, I realized it was a woman, her face lined with concern. She wore faded jeans and a worn-out shirt, not a nurse's uniform. Over her shoulder, I glimpsed a small table with what looked like a first aid kit and a handful of bandages. She spoke softly, her voice calm but urgent. "Hey, easy. You've been out for a couple of days." My mouth felt like sandpaper. Where am I?" I croaked. She offered a cautious half-smile. "You're at my cabin in the mountains. Don't worry, you're safe. Do you remember anything?" The last coherent memory I had was staggering away from my burning car, the taste of ash in my mouth. The terror that my plan had gone horribly wrong roared back. "Don't let her know who you are," a voice warned in my head. "Play dumb if you have to." But I needed answers first. I swallowed painfully. "Accident," I rasped. "My car! It caught fire, Another wave of dizziness hit me, and I slumped back against the cot. The woman pressed a hand to my shoulder, guiding me to lie still. "You're lucky I found you," she said, a hint of tension in her voice. "I was hiking in a canyon nearby when I saw smoke. By the time I got to the wreck, it was too hot to go near. I found you collapsed 100 yards from the fire. You were out cold, burned some, battered. Figured I couldn't just leave you there." In any other circumstance, I would have thanked her, maybe even been relieved. But my entire plan had depended on no one finding me. This is bad, I thought. She's a witness. She can tell the authorities I survived. Panic fluttered in my stomach. I forced another question through my cracked lips. "Did you call an ambulance?" The woman shook her head slowly. "No cell reception out here. And by the time I drove back to find a signal, I realized the cops would track you if I reported it." Her gaze flickered, revealing a private conflict. "I knew it might get complicated, especially if you didn't want to be found." Her words jolted me. "You suspect?" She shrugged, a faint smirk tugging at her lips. "Look, I'm not a mind reader, but I've seen enough runaways, battered folks. Even the occasional fugitive passed through these parts. Something about the scene made me think you weren't eager for official help." I stared at her in the dim lamplight, my pulse thunderous in my ears. Part of me was furious that a stranger now held all the cards. Another part was stunned by her decision not to turn me in or even call an ambulance. Why would you help me then?" She hesitated as though forming her answer carefully. "I've had my share of times where I wanted to disappear. Kinda recognized the look in your eyes. Guess I was giving you that chance." For a moment, tears threatened to form behind my eyes, tears of relief, confusion, maybe gratitude. This woman saved my life, and might also keep my secret. But I couldn't let my guard down yet. "Thank you," I managed, voice cracking. She nodded. "I did what I could. Set your dislocated shoulder, bandaged your cuts, tried to keep infection at bay. You were feverish for a while." She pointed at the battered first aid kit. "I'm not a doctor, but I've picked up a few skills." "Who are you?" I asked quietly. She pulled a stool closer, sitting with a controlled posture. "Name's Carly. I've been living up here a while, off the grid mostly. Like I said, I found you by accident." "David," I said reflexively, then instantly regretted it. I should have given a fake name, but it was too late. Her expression softened, though she said nothing more about it. My head pounded again, reminding me that rest was my best option. Before I could protest, she gently pressed a cup of water to my lips. I drank greedily, relief washing over me. Exhaustion clawed at my mind, and the adrenaline of fear receded, leaving me shaky. I let the darkness come once more, this time aware that Carly was near, presumably watching over me. This is not how I expected my death to go, I thought grimly before slipping under. Flashback. The final seconds of the crash. In the haze of fevered dreams, I relived the moment I'd tossed the lighter onto the gasoline-soaked trunk. Flames exploding in a rush of heat. A second explosion knocking me to the ground. I crawled away, vision blurred, limbs numb. My heart hammered with frantic purpose, disappear, vanish. Then the darkness. The dream replayed on a loop, always ending with me alone in a silent void. In that emptiness, I'd hear distant echoes of my children's voices. Dad? Daddy? Are you coming home? When I next opened my eyes, the lamp had been replaced by weak daylight spilling through a small window. The cabin was modest, one main room with a cot, a wood-burning stove, a rickety table, and stacks of canned goods. Carly was hunched over the stove, stirring something in a pot. The smell of tomato soup wafted toward me, making my empty stomach twist with hunger. I tried to sit up, wincing at the pain across my shoulder. A makeshift sling cradled my left arm. She turned, noticing me awake. Easy, you're still healing. She lifted the pot. Soup's about the only warm meal I can manage with the supplies I have. You up for it? I nodded gratefully, letting her ladle some into a chipped mug. The first sip tasted like heaven, even though it was slightly bland. I drank in silence, my mind racing with 1,000 questions. How long would I need to stay here? Would she keep her word about not involving anyone else? Carly watched me with guarded curiosity. I figured you'd have 1,000,000 questions, she finally said. Don't worry, I'm not telling anyone you're alive. If you want to stay low, that's your call. But your injuries need real attention soon, or you could get worse. I can't, I said thickly, setting the mug aside. My throat felt raw. If the hospitals find me, it'll blow everything. My plan depends on me being dead. She raised an eyebrow. Must be some plan. Something like that, I muttered. Then, seeing her concern, I added, I'll figure out medical care once I can move without passing out. For now, I appreciate you letting me recuperate. Carly nodded slowly. Fair enough. She didn't push for details. I sensed she knew better than to pry into a stranger's secrets. Outside, the wind rustled through pine trees, a reminder that we were likely miles from civilization. As I finished my soup, a bitter realization sank in. This location might be a blessing. Nobody would look for me in a remote cabin. If Carly truly intended to keep quiet, I could buy time to heal. My entire future hinged on avoiding detection. That night, the fever returned. I tossed and turned, half aware of Carly pressing damp cloths to my forehead, urging me to drink more water. I dreamed again of Angela, of the kids. I saw Lily's tear-streaked face at my funeral, Jacob's eyes filled with confusion. My chest ached with guilt, but the memory of Angela's betrayal fueled my resolve. This was the only way. By the time the fever broke, 3 days had passed in a fog of pain and delirium. Carly told me I'd wake to shout nonsense about a Charles and twins. She didn't ask for an explanation, but she gave me a pitying look, like someone used to hearing regrets in the dead of night. I offered no clarifications. My secrets remained locked behind clenched teeth. When I was finally lucid enough to sit up and eat properly, Carly pointed me to a tiny mirror hung by the doorway. You might want to see the aftermath. Steadying myself, I shuffled over, every muscle protesting. The face staring back from the mirror was barely recognizable. Scrapes and bruises covered my cheeks, a stitched gash above my left eyebrow, and bandages around my jaw. My hair was singed at the ends. The raw pink skin on my arms hinted at minor burns. If I hadn't known better, I'd think I'd been in a war zone. I swallowed hard. It worked, I told myself. I looked like a man who barely survived. A swirl of grim satisfaction mingled with horror at my reflection. I was alive, hidden away, which meant my plan had succeeded. Angela and the kids would believe I was gone. A part of me felt triumphant, avenged. Another part trembled with guilt so profound I could hardly breathe. Carly appeared at my side, offering a supportive arm. You'll heal, but you need rest. Her voice softened. I can drive you into town once you're stronger. There's a doc who doesn't ask too many questions if you pay in cash. He'll stitch you up discreetly. But it's your call. I hesitated, the thought of venturing into any public space sending a surge of paranoia through me. Angela might have put out a missing person report. The insurance claim might be under investigation, but that was the reason I'd staged a thoroughly burnt wreck to remove the possibility of suspicion. They won't look for me in some remote corner. Still, I dreaded the idea of risking an encounter. Let's wait a bit, I finally murmured. She nodded. All right. But you can't stay holed up forever. You're going to need supplies soon. And once your shoulder heals enough, you might want to figure out your next move. My next move. The words echoed in my head. I'd planned the crash meticulously, but I hadn't thought beyond get away from California, vanish. Now, confronted with reality, I realized how unprepared I was to live a life on the run. I had some hidden cash stashed in a storage unit far from my old home. Fake IDs I'd purchased online months ago, but no real blueprint for sustaining myself long-term. Angela's betrayal, my heartbreak, and my single-minded thirst for revenge had overshadowed the practical details of survival. Slumping back onto the cot, I stared at the low ceiling. Guilt gnawed at my insides. Jacob and Lily. They think I'm dead right now. They're probably crying themselves to sleep. The thought made my heart twist, but I forced the images away. This was necessary, I reminded myself. They'll move on. They'll have money. They won't see the ugly aftermath of divorce or a custody battle. Angela would carry the burden of guilt, and Charles could go to hell. Meanwhile, I'd be free, right? Carly sensed my turmoil. She didn't offer cliches or false reassurances. Instead, she quietly draped a thin blanket over me and said, "Sleep. We'll talk tomorrow." Her footsteps receded, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I closed my eyes, the cabin's gentle creaks and sighs lulling me. Beneath the physical pain, beneath the anxiety, I felt a cold flicker of satisfaction. I did it. Angela will suffer with the memory of what she caused, while I'm beyond her reach. Yet that satisfaction was laced with regret so deep, it seemed to stretch on forever. My self-imposed exile had begun. The next few mornings in Carly's cabin felt like a strange boot camp for secrecy. Each day, I forced my battered body out of the cot, carefully testing my mobility. My shoulder still hurt like hell, but I was at least able to move my arm in a limited range. My ribs ached with every breath, reminding me of the crash's violence. Carly turned out to be more resourceful than I'd guessed. She had a small generator for electricity, rationed out for a few hours each evening. She collected rainwater in barrels, had a shortwave radio for emergencies, and kept a battered laptop with a data stick that sometimes caught a faint signal from a cell tower miles away. The perfect hideaway. If she was telling the truth about living off the grid, nobody would think to look for me here. One morning, while I practiced walking laps around the cabin to rebuild my stamina, she rummaged through a trunk near her bed. Pulling out a folded map, she spread it on the rickety table, beckoning me over. "So," she said, tapping a region of forested peaks, "we're here. Closest real town is about 20 miles west. If you go north another 10, there's a small city. That's where the discreet doctor is." I studied the map. "If I needed to get somewhere else like another state, what's my best route?" Carly traced a finger across a series of back roads. "You could skirt the main highway by taking these old logging roads. It's not quick, but it's low profile. You'd want a reliable vehicle, though, and you can't borrow mine forever." I swallowed. My old sedan was destroyed, which had been part of the plan, but I hadn't expected to be reliant on a stranger's car. Damn, I messed up. Still, I had to adapt. "If you help me get to that doctor," I ventured, "I can wire some money from my hidden accounts once I get access. That'll let me buy a used vehicle, maybe an RV, something to keep me moving." She shrugged. "I don't mind giving a lift, but only if you're sure no one's hunting for you. My cabin's off the radar, and I'd like to keep it that way." Her words reminded me I wasn't the only one with secrets. Something about the determined set of her jaw told me she had her own reasons for living out here. But I didn't pry. We had a mutual agreement: don't ask too many questions. Once my head cleared enough to think beyond pain, I mentally ticked off the next phases of my plan. Before the crash, I'd stashed forged IDs under a false name, Andrew Miller, along with a few $1,000s in cash in a locker near a Greyhound bus station. My plan had been to retrieve those items immediately after the accident, but obviously I never made it that far. "I'll need to get them eventually," I told Carly. She eyed me, arms crossed. "That means traveling back into more populated areas. You're sure nobody's on the lookout for a burned-up man with a busted shoulder?" My stomach lurched. I recalled how I'd meticulously arranged for the police to find my incinerated vehicle. The official narrative: David Armstrong died in a tragic accident. My remains presumably unidentifiable, but confirmed via the VN and personal items. If everything went as I'd intended, no one would be searching for me as a living person. Yeah, I said quietly. I'm confident nobody's expecting me to show up alive. Carly's gaze flickered with something like pity. All right, let me know when you're ready. We'll drive at night. My physical wounds weren't the only injuries needing time to heal. At night, when Carly retired to her small bedroom space, I'd lie awake on my cot, staring at the cabin's wooden ceiling. My mind wrestled with the memory of Angela's betrayal, her lips locked with Charles. You destroyed us, I thought angrily. Now you get to mourn me while I survive. A twisted sense of revenge warmed me. I pictured her tear-streaked face at my funeral, consumed by guilt. But then, inevitably, my thoughts turned to Jacob and Lily. They'll cry themselves to sleep, believing I'm gone forever. That realization cracked my heart. Is your revenge worth their heartbreak? A taunting voice in my head would ask. Each time I stuffed down the remorse, reminding myself of the rationale. A traumatizing accident is still better for them than a nasty divorce. The logic felt hollow in the darkness. Sometimes I drifted into troubled sleep, haunted by dreams of Lily calling out for me or Jacob screaming, "Dad, where are you?" I'd jolt awake, drenched in sweat, my ribs burning. If Carly ever heard my nightmares, she never mentioned it. She simply left a thermos of water by my cot each night. Days turned into a week. I grew stronger. My shoulder mended enough for me to move around without grimacing every 2 seconds. One afternoon, Carly handed me a small envelope. Thought you might need these. Inside were painkillers and antibiotics. Stole them from my own stash, she admitted. But you were looking pretty rough a few days back. I nodded gratefully, swallowing my pride along with the pills. We spent the next hour planning a supply run. She'd drive into town, pick up basic groceries, and I'd keep out of sight. Don't want anyone noticing I suddenly have a house guest, Carly warned. I usually buy for one, so I'll spread out my shopping to different stores. That logic hammered home how precarious our situation was. A single slip could unravel the new life I was trying to construct. Once Carly left for the store, I paced the cabin, forcing myself to do gentle stretches. My mind wandered to the battered laptop she'd mentioned. If I checked the news, I might see my obituary. The thought churned my stomach, yet curiosity gnawed at me. Eventually, I dug the device out of a rucksack near her bed, opened it on the table, and tried the data stick. 2 bars of signal enough, hopefully. My hands trembled as I typed my own name into a search engine. David Armstrong, accident, obituary. A handful of local news blurbs popped up. Tragic car fire claims. Life of local father authorities. Identify burned vehicle as David Armstrong's memorial planned. No body recovered. I scanned them in a haze. The articles mentioned a wife, Angela, and 2 children left behind. A wave of nausea crashed over me as I read the phrase, beloved husband and father. One article quoted a family friend stating, he was always so devoted. It's unimaginable he's gone. My vision blurred, tears threatening to spill. I forced myself to swallow, clicking away from the articles. I typed, Angela Armstrong Seabreeze celebrations next. A recent blog post said her event planning company was reeling from a personal tragedy. Another snippet reported some wedding cancellations. A pang of mixed triumph and sorrow struck me. Charles's sabotage plus my death must be hitting her business hard. I stared at the screen, bitterness and guilt tangling in my chest. Enough. I closed the laptop, swallowing a lump in my throat. This is the life I chose. No going back now. I placed the laptop carefully in Carly's rucksack, then lay on the cot, exhaustion tugging at my mind. I'm dead to the world. Time to accept it. That evening, Carly returned with groceries. I helped her unload, ignoring the flare of pain in my ribs. She glanced at me, noticing my pained expression. You shouldn't be lifting those, she scolded. Still healing. I'm fine, I grumbled, though I appreciated her concern. We ate a quiet dinner canned chili heated on the stove with a handful of crackers. The conversation was minimal. I recognized a certain kinship in Carly's eyes, a quiet acceptance that we both carried wounds we'd rather not discuss. Afterward, I retreated to my cot, bracing for another night of restless dreams. But before Carly turned in, she paused by my makeshift bed. "You know," she said softly, "whatever you're running from, it's not always easier to vanish. Sometimes it just hurts differently." I stared at her, unsure how to respond. Her words struck too close to the conflict raging in my chest. "I don't have another choice," I whispered. "Not after what happened." She watched me for a long moment, then nodded. "Your call," she said simply, and walked away. Her footsteps across the creaking floor sounded like echoes in a lonely canyon. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to remain steady. She had no idea about Angela or the kids, or how heartbreak had twisted my reason into this plan. I can't let doubt consume me, or else I'd risk unraveling everything. Eventually, darkness took me again, swirling me into nightmares of funeral processions and Angela's tear-streaked face. I clung to the one cold comfort. I'm alive, and I'm free from her betrayal. After 2 weeks in Carly's cabin, my body had mended enough that I could get by without constant bed rest. My ribs still twinged, and my shoulder wasn't at full strength, but I could do simple tasks without gasping for breath. With the improvement in my physical state, I felt the first faint urge to leave the cabin and move on with my plan, forging a real life under a new alias. But actual living day to day was more complicated than I'd expected. During my downtime, I tried to form a routine. Each morning, I'd wake at dawn to the sound of birds outside the window. I'd take a short walk around the property's perimeter, never straying too far. The crisp mountain air braced me, occasionally reminding me how my old suburban life was so different. Mornings once filled with kids' cartoons and Angela's phone calls about her events. Carly mostly kept to herself. She'd vanish for hours, presumably checking traps or gathering firewood, returning with game or a handful of wild berries. We rarely exchanged more than a few sentences. Still, a quiet camaraderie formed between us. Two people living off the radar, each with secrets. She taught me how to operate her wood-burning stove without setting the chimney ablaze, how to filter water for drinking. I, in turn, tried to remain useful, splitting logs for kindling once my shoulder allowed it. At night, I'd battle my insomnia. My mind returned again and again to the same questions. Is Angela blaming herself for my death? Are the kids coping? Did Charles escalate his attacks on her or quietly move on to his next conquest? And then the darker question. Why do I even care? She's the one who cheated. It was maddening, the push-pull of heartbreak and vengeance. I found a battered notebook among Carly's supplies and took to writing my thoughts late at night. At first, it was just scribbles, venting about my anger, my guilt. Over time, it evolved into half-formed letters addressed to Jacob and Lily, explaining why I had to leave. I never intended to send them, of course, but putting the words down felt like a feeble attempt at keeping them in my life somehow. The nightmares never fully went away. Sometimes I'd dream of the wedding photo on our mantel, Angela's hand in mine, both of us smiling. In the dream, the photo would burst into flames. I'd wake in a cold sweat, the cabin's darkness pressing in. One evening, I startled awake to find Carly standing near my cot, a lantern in her hand. "You all right?" she asked quietly. My breath came fast, sweat plastered my hair to my forehead. "Yeah," I panted, trying to calm my racing heart. "Bad dream." She gave a small nod. "You were shouting something about Charles's again. He a friend?" A bitter laugh escaped me. "Far from it." I wiped my forehead, noticing my hands were shaking. Carly didn't pry further, just handed me a canteen of water. As I sipped, I realized she'd stayed up after hearing my cries. It struck me that she was more compassionate than I deserved. "I appreciate this, you know," I mumbled. She simply shrugged. "I've had nightmares, too. Sometimes all you can do is not face them alone." That statement lingered with me after she left, an odd warmth in my chest that someone understood the terror I was carrying. But it also reminded me that every day I remained here, I risked letting my secrets slip. I need to keep moving. A week later, my shoulder was stable enough that I could do most chores without flinching. Carly had gone on another supply run, leaving me alone in the cabin. I took the chance to power up her laptop again. This time, I checked an old, rarely used email address. I'd given it to Wendy, Charles's ex-head of staff, weeks before my death. telling her it was a private line if she ever needed to contact me about Charles's activities. No messages. My inbox was empty. I felt a conflicted wave of relief and disappointment. Maybe she'd concluded I was truly gone. Should I risk emailing her? A single message could blow my cover if anyone else had access to her device. But the temptation was strong. Wendy might know how Angela was faring, or if Charles was out of the picture. I hovered over the compose button, heart pounding. Then I closed the laptop with a snap. No, it was too risky. If Wendy even mentioned my contact to Becky or Angela, everything would unravel. I'd come too far. Better to remain silent. I stood, shoving the laptop aside, frustration gnawing at me. Despite the guilt and nightmares, I couldn't ignore a peculiar sense of freedom creeping over me. For the first time in years, I had no day job, no parenting schedule, no suffocating obligations. The betrayal that had once drowned me in pain was now a dull ache. This hush in the mountains allowed me to exist without the daily triggers of my old life. It was lonely, sure, but it was also simple. I found myself oddly missing the frantic noise of fatherhood, Lily's laughter, Jacob's constant questions. At the same time, I felt relief from the heartbreak of seeing Angela's face in every room, from the obligations of a marriage she'd torn apart. We can't both exist in the same world, I'd once told myself. So I left hers. Yet the hollow emptiness weighed on me. This was life in the shadows, no contact, no comfort. Carly was there, but we kept to the surface, two solitary souls cohabiting. She'd occasionally drop cryptic hints about her own past, referencing a family she left behind, but never detailing why. I'd just nod, understanding that sometimes running is easier than facing the mess. One afternoon, while Carly was out checking a trap line, I heard the crunch of tires on the cabin's gravel drive. Alarm shot through me, heart in my throat. Who's here? I scrambled to find a place to hide. With my shoulder still healing, I couldn't risk a confrontation. Sliding behind a tall shelf, I listened intently. A knock sounded at the door. A man's voice called, "Carly, you home?" I recognized no hint of suspicion in his tone. He sounded casual, maybe a neighbor or friend. Carly had never mentioned neighbors, but this was her territory, not mine. My chest constricted as I held my breath, praying he'd leave. Another knock, then footsteps circled the cabin's perimeter. He must have spotted Carly's truck parked outside, suspecting she was near. After a tense minute, he must have given up, because I heard the engine start and drive off. Letting out a shaky exhale, I emerged from my hiding spot. That was close. Even if the guy posed no immediate threat, the last thing I needed was word getting out that Carly had taken in a strange man. My pulse stayed high even after the sound of the vehicle faded. The reality of my precarious existence loomed once more. This can't go on forever. Heightened resolve. That evening, Carly returned, noticing my ashen face. I explained the unexpected visitor. She frowned. Probably Brent, a guy who lives down the road. Sometimes he checks on me just to make sure I'm not injured or something. He's harmless. For you, maybe, I muttered. But if he saw me... She exhaled slowly. Right. That's not good. After a pause, she squared her shoulders. Then we should make a plan for you to move on soon. We'll get you that discreet dock, pick up a used car. You can vanish from here. Sound right? My chest tightened at the finality of her words. I gave a short nod. Yeah, it does. I won't overstay my welcome. It's not about that, she said softly. I just see how on edge you are. You won't heal, mentally or physically, if you're constantly worried about being found. She busied herself, scooping flour into a bowl for dinner prep. Tomorrow I'll drive you into the small city. We'll do it at dusk, take the back roads. You'll see the dock, and then you can figure out your next step. Deal? Deal, I echoed, relief and anxiety tangling in my gut. This was the push I needed, a chance to secure the final aspects of my new life. But a tremor of fear lanced through me. What if something goes wrong? Still, there was no alternative. Staying at Carly's forever was impossible. That night, I stepped outside before bed, letting the crisp air fill my lungs. The stars were scattered across the sky, a billion silent witnesses to my plight. I'm about to step fully into the life of a ghost, I thought. No more hidden in a caretaker's cabin. My shoulder throbbed in sympathy, as if sensing the weight of the journey ahead. I heard Carly's soft footsteps behind me. "You all right?" she asked, her voice low, respectful of the nighttime hush. I nodded. Just saying goodbye to the peace, I guess. Even in my tension, I couldn't deny a pang of gratitude. "Thank you, Carly, for everything." She managed a faint smile. "Don't mention it. Good luck out there." We stood for a moment in comfortable silence, the wind rustling the pines, neither of us needing to say more. Tomorrow I'd leave this place, stepping into the next chapter of my lonely existence, armed with a half-healed body and a raging storm of unresolved emotions. The thought both electrified and terrified me. No matter what, I'm gone from my old life for good. The following afternoon, Carly and I prepared for our nocturnal trip. She gave me a set of baggy clothes that had once belonged to a friend of hers so I wouldn't stand out wearing my singed shirt and destroyed jeans. The mirror's reflection showed me in a black hoodie, a baseball cap tugged low, barely recognizable. It suited the anonymity I needed. We set off just before sunset. Carly's pickup truck rattled down a narrow dirt path, avoiding the main routes. I gripped the door handle, each bump jostling my sore shoulder. A sense of finality weighed on me. I'm leaving the safety of the cabin. This is step one to forging my new identity. Anxiety clashed with excitement. I have to trust I can pull this off. At dusk, we reached the outskirts of a small city. Flickering streetlights and modest buildings came into view. Carly parked behind a rundown diner, cutting the engine. "The Doc's place is a few blocks over," she explained. "He runs a clinic out of a converted garage. You sure you can walk it?" I tested my legs. "I'll manage." The idea of walking public streets felt surreal after weeks of isolation. Every face, every passing car felt like a potential threat. "Don't look suspicious," I told myself. "You gonna wait here?" She nodded. "Yeah. After you're done, come back. Then we'll find you a used car, or at least get you to a bus station so you can reach your stash. Unless you've changed your mind?" I shook my head firmly. "No, this is what I need." She stared at me a second longer, then handed me a wad of cash. "Consider this a loan. My donation to the cause. Pay me back if you ever can." I started to protest, but she waved me off. "Call it karmic balance." Emotions swelled in my chest, a tangled mixture of gratitude and stubborn pride. I don't deserve this kindness, but I didn't argue further. "Thank you," I murmured, slipping out of the truck and adjusting the cap over my bandages. My heart hammered as I strode down the alley, each step echoing in the quiet evening. Finding the clinic was easy enough. A battered sign reading "Private Medical" hung above a large garage door. The faint glow of fluorescent light spilled from inside. Glancing over my shoulder, I pushed through the door, heart pounding. An older man with graying hair sat behind a makeshift reception desk, flipping through a dog-eared medical magazine. He looked up, eyes narrowing as he took in my hoodie, the sling, the bruises still visible. "You knew?" he asked, not unkindly. I cleared my throat. "Yeah, a friend told me you don't ask questions." His lips quirked in a humorless smile. "Money first, no questions, second." He pointed to a steel lockbox on the counter. "200 gets you a checkup. Extra for supplies or advanced work." Wordlessly, I handed over $300 from Carly's roll. The man grunted, stepping aside to reveal a curtained-off exam area. "Name?" he asked. I paused, mind racing. "Andrew," I finally said, using my intended alias. He nodded, scribbling something in a worn ledger. "All right, Andrew. Let's see what we can do." He motioned me behind the curtain, flipping on a bright exam lamp. The stark whiteness stung my eyes as I sat on a stool. He carefully unwrapped my makeshift bandages. He muttered, prodding at my shoulder. "Someone did a decent job realigning this. Burns are healing, but you'll scar. Ribs might be cracked, but not shattered. You in serious pain?" I winced. "Manageable." He pressed along my side, each touch sending a jolt of discomfort through me. Still, I gritted my teeth. He applied fresh antiseptic, replaced bandages, and gave me a small bottle of pills labeled for pain management. "Take it easy. Try not to get in any bar fights," he said in a dry tone. Despite the tension, I almost cracked a smile. Noted. Thanks. He gave a curt nod, accepting the extra 100 for supplies. Stay safe, Andrew. If you need more help, you know where to find me. With that, he ushered me out. No small talk, no prying. Just efficient, secret medical care. The city streets felt oddly claustrophobic after weeks in the cabin's open air. I stuck to the shadows, hoodie pulled low. Before returning to Carly, I passed a small convenience store with a bright rack of local newspapers on display. My chest tightened with curiosity. Angela's business might have made local headlines. In a moment of reckless impulse, I grabbed one from the rack. The clerk inside watched me suspiciously, so I paid quickly, ducking back into the alley. Skimming the paper under a dim street lamp, I froze when I spotted a small blurb in the lifestyle section. Seabreeze celebrations cancels upcoming events. Due to owner's personal tragedy. The article noted Angela had stepped back from major contracts, citing overwhelming grief. Some clients expressed frustration, others sympathy. There was a reference to the tragic accident that claimed her husband's life. A pang shot through me, a twisted cocktail of triumph, her business is suffering, and remorse. My kids are part of that tragedy. I shoved the paper into my hoodie, pulse thudding. The plan was working. Angela's life overshadowed by guilt and loss. So why do I feel like throwing up? When I got back to the truck, Carly was leaning against the front fender, arms folded. "All good?" she asked, worry in her eyes. I handed her the leftover pain meds. "Doctor patched me up. Let's find a car, or else the next bus station." She nodded, climbing behind the wheel. "There's a sketchy used lot on the edge of town. If you've got enough cash, you can probably buy a junker, no questions asked." I stared out the window as we drove, neon signs blurring past. One more step. We pulled into the lot, a neon quality auto sign flickering overhead. A bored attendant eyed me with disinterest when I hobbled out. Cash in hand, I pointed at a battered sedan. "How much?" He named a price that made me wince, but I forked it over, not daring to haggle and draw suspicion. 20 minutes later, I had a new set of car keys, no registration papers beyond a generic bill of sale. Andrew Miller's first ride, I thought grimly. Carly stood by her truck, headlights illuminating the dark lot. We said little, but our goodbye was clear. She held out her hand, and for the first time, I grabbed it in a firm shake, ignoring my shoulder's protest. "You saved my life," I managed, voice thick. Her gaze flicked down. "Just wanted to help," she said quietly. "I hope whatever you're looking for, you find it." I swallowed past the lump in my throat. I'm looking for a life free of betrayal, free of heartbreak. "Same goes for you," I whispered. With a final nod, Carly climbed into her pickup, taillights disappearing into the night. I watched until darkness swallowed them. Then I turned to my newly acquired junker, heart hammering with both dread and anticipation. Now it's just me. The sedan's engine coughed, but it started. My ribs stabbed with every breath as I maneuvered onto the back road, trusting the address I'd memorized for that storage locker near a bus station. If I could retrieve my stash cash, fake IDs, I'd vanish further, drifting wherever I wanted. But as I merged onto a quiet highway, I couldn't shake the ache in my chest. "Jacob and Lily, are you okay? Are you sleeping? Doing homework? Missing me?" My hands tightened on the wheel. "Stop it," I scolded myself. "You can't have them and your revenge. You made your choice." The world slid by in a blur of headlights and taillights. Each mile carried me further from the man I used to be, deeper into the life I'd crafted in the shadows. Yet a tiny voice whispered that this new existence might be emptier than I'd imagined. The question pulsed in my mind. Am I truly free, or just running from the wreckage? As the night stretched on, doubt and loneliness became my only companions, more oppressive than the physical pain. I grimaced, pressing the gas pedal, determined to outrun the ghosts trailing behind me. Hours later, dawn broke across the horizon, casting pale gold light on the deserted highway. My eyes burned with fatigue, but I refused to stop. Part of me hoped that if I kept driving, I might eventually leave behind the heartbreak. Another part knew heartbreak was etched into my soul, inescapable. Clutching the steering wheel, I muttered into the emptiness, "You did this to me, Angela. Now live with it." The words echoed in the car's cabin, hollow and cold. The image of Lily's tearful eyes from my last real memory of her stabbed at my conscience. Don't waver. Keep going. I kept going. I've always imagined time as a slow river that carries us along whether we like it or not. No matter how much we fight the current, we can't escape its pull. Now, more than a decade has slipped away since my staged death, and I feel that flow more acutely than ever. My reflection in any stray mirror shows hair graying at the temples, lines of regret carved into my face. It's unsettling how quietly the years can accumulate. I settled eventually in a modest coastal town far from California. Under my new identity, Andrew Miller, I spent the early years drifting from cheap rental to cheap rental, doing freelance web design and digital marketing, anything that let me stay hidden behind a screen. I never stayed anywhere long enough to establish deep ties. Friendships? Casual at best, superficial, romances? None worth discussing. My existence was solitary, but it felt safer that way. Nobody to ask questions about my past. At first, every day was a swirl of longing for Jacob and Lily. I'd catch myself walking near a playground just to hear children's laughter, or lingering in grocery aisles where parents shopped with kids in tow. I told myself it was only temporary, that I was doing them a favor by disappearing. But as the years piled on, I realized temporary was turning into a permanent fixture. Their childhood memories of me must have blurred by now. Maybe that's for the best, I used to think. They can heal without the messy truth. And so I carried on. I followed local news from California at first, scouring obituaries or wedding announcements to glean scraps of info about Angela and the kids. But time distanced me from the daily feed of her life. Angela's name rarely came up. Once in a blue moon, I'd find a mention of Seabreeze celebrations, maybe a new property. I read with a grim sense of satisfaction that she'd struggled for a while, some article referencing a downturn. But eventually, the press seemed to move on. Had she recovered? Did Charles Mitchell still cast a shadow over her business? I didn't know. Part of me stopped caring. Then, about 2 years ago, I heard from an old contact, someone I'd met in my in-between days, who said he bumped into Wendy, Charles's former head of staff. She had gone to Austin, or so the rumor said, and apparently thrived in her own event management gig. Did Angela remain in California, or had she also moved? I had no idea. My sporadic attempts to locate Becky or Travis online turned up no direct leads. I let it go, focusing on keeping my own life afloat. Now, as the steady tick of time continued, something changed in me. Maybe it was turning 50, maybe just the ache of living in a self-imposed cage. My mind drifted more often to Jacob and Lily. I did the math. They'd be young adults now, nearly 20. If they'd gone to college, they might be finishing up their sophomore or junior year. When does a father's guilt run out? I asked myself. I had no answer. It took a random stroke of curiosity to discover the truth of their whereabouts. One late evening, alone in my small apartment, I typed Jacob Lily Armstrong into a social media search. My heart pounded. I'd done this occasionally but never found anything. Now, though, a profile picture popped up for Jacob Armstrong, displaying a young man with a bright smile that reminded me so much of Angela's. In the background, a university crest. My chest constricted. College student, I realized, tears pricking my eyes. He had posted a short bio, business major at Redwood University. Redwood was a private college near the Bay Area. That meant he'd stayed in California. Lily's account was locked down more tightly. I only found a mention in Jacob's profile. So proud of my sister Lily at Pacific State University. She's at a different school, I thought, my pulse fluttering. They've grown into separate paths. Did they keep pictures of me? Memories? My regret slammed into me, fresh and painful, but also a fierce longing. I want to see them. And that's how the slow unraveling began, my old life creeping back, demanding I confront what I'd done. For years, I'd told myself they were better off. Now, with them on the cusp of adulthood, was there a chance they had the right to know the truth? From what I could piece together, I found 1 or 2 wedding industry interviews referencing her. Angela still ran Seabreeze celebrations, though it never expanded as massively as she once dreamed. One article called her a respected boutique planner. Another mentioned she operated mostly along the coast, specializing in mid-size weddings. The tone was professional, but the text hinted she'd faced major setbacks over the years. That's probably my fault, too, I thought wryly. Charles Mitchell, on the other hand, a few gossipy blog posts claimed his hotels suffered under rumors of unethical practices. Some rebranding had happened. I suspected maybe the seeds of sabotage I'd planted pre-crash eventually blossomed, or perhaps his own arrogance caught up with him. Either way, he seemed less prominent now. The mention of him triggered only a mild flicker of bitterness in me. He's not the reason I'm itching to go back. No, it was the kids, pure and simple. And a heavy weight pressed on my conscience. I stole their father from them, just to punish Angela. That knowledge gnawed at me relentlessly, especially as I realized Jacob and Lily were forging their identities as adults. Maybe they deserved the truth. There was another angle, the life insurance. Travis had once hinted that if an insurance company discovered fraud, the legal repercussions could be dire for me, for Angela, even for the kids' financial stability. But I'd also read that certain statutes of limitations eventually lapse. If enough years passed, the insurance company might have no legal ground to reclaim the payout, and 10-12 years was typically a common threshold for such claims. So maybe the time is up. I felt that realization like a jolt of electricity. If the risk of prosecution is gone, maybe I can come forward. But would that help, or just reopen old wounds? Jacob and Lily are basically grown. Angela might be living a stable, if haunted, life. Would they want me to reappear? My head spun with contradictory emotions. I can't decide alone, so I did the only thing I could think of. I reached out to Travis Miller, quietly, carefully. The man had always been my confidant, even though I'd forced him to keep monstrous secrets. Maybe he could provide clarity on the legal ramifications. I used an encrypted email account to send a short, cryptic message. T, it's an old friend. If you still remember me, I might need your counsel. Please respond if you're open to hearing a ghost's confession. I half expected him never to reply. But within 3 days, a terse message arrived. David, if this is truly you, we need to talk. I've held your secrets longer than you know. Just seeing his words made my heart hammer. A swirl of gratitude, guilt, and relief overcame me. We arranged a covert phone call at a time he specified late at night, presumably when no one else would overhear. When I dialed the number, my stomach twisted. Travis answered on the second ring, his voice as steady as I remembered. David, are you all right? My throat closed. I forced out a reply. As all right as a man can be after more than a decade of living a lie. He sighed, and I swore I heard tension fade from his tone. I've wondered about you every day. Angela has too. Her name stung my ears, but I pressed on. I need your guidance, Travis, about the statute of limitations. Am I risking prison if I ever, show up? A pause crackled over the line. Probably not now. The insurance claim was finalized years ago, and the official cause was an accident. Barring some extraordinary move by the company, I doubt they'd open an investigation after so much time. But legally, it's murky. You faked your death. You lied to law enforcement. That's serious. However, after 10-12 years, a lot of avenues for prosecution close. Relief coursed through me. So I might have a chance to see my kids without being hauled away. Another loaded silence. You realize how big this is, David? If you reappear, it'll shatter everything they know. My voice trembled. I know. That's why I'm not sure. I needed to confirm if it's even possible before I weigh the consequences. Travis exhaled. I can't make the decision for you. But consider one thing. The kids are grown. They've spent most of their lives mourning a father who died tragically. If you reemerge, it could devastate them just as much as losing you in the first place. Or maybe not. Maybe they'll welcome you with open arms. I can't predict it. I swallowed a lump in my throat. How is Angela? She's survived, David. She was wrecked for years. I've never seen a person carry that much guilt, but she's stabilized, especially as the kids grew up. Now she's an empty nester, ironically. Sea Breeze Celebrations isn't huge, but it keeps her going. She never remarried. A pang tugged at me. I forced a calm tone. All right, thank you. Let's stay in touch. I need time to think. I'll be here, Travis said gently. For what it's worth, your kids deserve to know the truth, but that doesn't mean it'll be easy. We hung up, a hollow ache spreading through my chest. Yes, they deserved the truth, but am I brave enough to face it? In the following weeks, I wrestled with indecision. Eventually, I decided the least I could do was observe them from a distance like a ghost father checking in. If I saw they were thriving, maybe I'd fade away forever. If they needed me, maybe I'd find the courage to reveal myself. So I flew to California for the first time since the accident, heart-hammering the whole plane ride. I wore a baseball cap and tinted glasses, changed my hair color to a subtle ash brown. I stayed in a cheap motel near Redwood University where Jacob studied. My hands shook as I walked the campus, pretending to be a tourist snapping photos of the historic buildings. And then I saw him, Jacob, my son. He was taller than I remembered, lean with broad shoulders. He wore a redwood sweatshirt, backpack slung over one arm. I almost collapsed right there on the pavement, emotions thundering in my chest. That's my boy. My mind reeled with memories of him as a toddler, racing his toy cars around the living room. Now he was a man, with an easy grin, chatting with friends in front of a lecture hall. I lurked behind a cluster of trees, tears pricking my eyes. He laughed at something a friend said, and I heard the echo of his childhood giggle. My heart squeezed painfully, longing to run forward and hug him. But I just stood frozen, letting the moment stretch out. He looks happy, I noted. He seemed confident, well-adjusted. Maybe the emptiness I'd caused by vanishing had healed into a scar he carried inside, or maybe Angela had comforted him enough that he was okay. The next day, I mustered the courage to drive to Pacific State University, a few hours away where Lily studied. My chest was still tight with guilt from seeing Jacob. Would Lily look different too? She was always so wide-eyed and artistic. I hovered near the Arts Center on campus, scanning the students. Suddenly, there she was, Lily Armstrong, hair in a loose braid, wearing a floral blouse. She had a messenger bag brimming with papers, possibly sketches. I followed at a discreet distance. She stopped to chat with a friend, laughter lighting up her face. She has Angela's eyes, I realized, my throat constricting. And a hint of my jawline, maybe. I watched her wave goodbye to her friend and wander into an art gallery building. She seemed poised, confident, perhaps a bit reserved. They're both doing so well. Relief mingled with sorrow. They grew up without me, but they grew up. That night back in my motel, I wept for the first time in years. A swirl of conflicting emotions battered me. Pride in who they'd become, anguish for missing all those milestones, confusion about whether revealing myself would fix anything or ruin everything. God, what do I do now? I told myself I'd leave after observing the kids, but some twisted compulsion drove me to see if I could catch a glimpse of Angela. According to an online business directory, she still owned a house in Orange County, not far from her old address. Does she live alone? Or did she eventually sell it and move on? I rented a car paying in cash, using my Andrew Miller ID, and drove by her street one afternoon. My heart hammered so hard I nearly turned around, but I continued, creeping along the block like some shady stalker. The house came into view, a small, cream-colored rancher. The lawn was well kept, a couple of rose bushes in front. My mind flashed to memories of weekend mornings mowing that lawn while the kids played. Those days are gone forever. I didn't see Angela's car in the driveway. With trembling hands, I parked across the street, told myself I'd just watch for a moment. Suddenly, the front door opened. Angela? My breath caught. But it was a middle-aged couple I didn't recognize, stepping out with a dog on a leash. The man locked the door, then they walked to the sidewalk, the dog trotting happily. My hopes shattered. She must have sold the place. Disappointment coiled in my gut, along with a trace of relief. I can't handle seeing her face-to-face right now anyway. I started the engine, intending to leave, but the couple paused on the sidewalk, noticing my idling car. I panicked and drove off. Heart pounding, I realized how close I'd come to a meltdown. She doesn't live here anymore, so maybe she'd moved somewhere else in Orange County. Back at the motel, I collapsed on the bed, every muscle trembling from the emotional roller coaster. Jacob's in Redwood, Lily's at Pacific State. Angela? Possibly living in a different part of town. They were all continuing their lives, presumably stable. Do I dare reappear? I dialed Travis again, late at night, a single lamp illuminating my cheap motel room. He answered softly, sounding older and more worn than before. David? It's me, I said, voice shaking. I saw the kids. They look healthy, happy. I didn't talk to them. I just watched from a distance. Travis breathed a sad sigh. Must have been rough. My throat felt tight. Yeah, I'm torn. Part of me wants to let them go on believing I died. Another part feels I owe them the truth, especially with the statute of limitations basically gone. You do owe them that, Travis agreed gently. But whether it's the right move depends on what they can handle. And Angela, too. She's never stopped carrying that burden of guilt. Her biggest regret has always been that you died believing she didn't love you. A painful lump rose in my throat. Did she love me, even after betraying me? My mind reeled with memories of the betrayal, the bitterness. Well, she'll learn that I'm alive and that I left her to live with that guilt for over a decade. That's not exactly comforting. Travis hesitated. You may find that time changes perspectives, David. People find ways to forgive things they never thought they could. I let out a shaky laugh. We'll see. Then, after a long silence, I murmured, I need to think about how to do this. If I decide to come forward, I'll have to do it carefully. Whatever you choose, Travis said, I'll handle the logistics. Mail me or call me. I can deliver letters, schedule a meeting, you name it. Just be sure this is what you truly want. We ended the call. I stared at the dark ceiling, adrenaline thrumming. Jacob, Lily Dad might come back from the grave. Is that mercy or cruelty? Over the next few days, I drove aimlessly, my motel room becoming a sanctuary of indecision. I'd get a burger at a local diner, see a father and teenage daughter joking over fries, and tears would threaten. I missed all those father-kid moments. Late at night, I'd flip through local news channels, half expecting to see Angela's face or some mention of an upcoming wedding she was planning. Nothing. But a thought took hold. They're grown now. They can process it differently than if they were children. The statute of limitations gave me a legal opening. The moral question remained. Have I punished Angela enough? Are the kids better off continuing to believe I'm dead, or do they deserve the truth? In the quiet hum of the motel's ancient air conditioner, I realized no matter what, my reappearance would cause heartbreak. The question was, could it also bring closure? I scribbled 2 lists, reasons to stay dead versus reasons to come forward. Under stay dead, I wrote, no disruption to their stable lives. Avoid reviving old pain. Angela can keep the insurance money without complications. Under come forward, I wrote, truth. My children might want their father even if it's complicated. Potential chance for forgiveness. End my own loneliness and guilt. Staring at those lines, I felt my chest tighten. Truth versus heartbreak. I wished someone else could decide for me, but it was my burden. By the end of the week, I was drained. I had glimpsed Jacob and Lily's adult lives, realized Angela had moved on physically, if not emotionally, and confirmed the legal path was partially open. Now, standing on the threshold of an enormous choice, I felt trapped by the magnitude of what lay ahead. Then, a new wave of guilt hit me. I am still punishing Angela by staying hidden and still punishing myself. My children have missed the father they believed was dead. If I do nothing, we all remain in this twisted limbo. If I come forward, we face an emotional storm that could tear them apart or perhaps lead to a flicker of healing. Which is the lesser evil? I packed my bag, left the motel, and drove down the coast. The ocean stretched vast and gray, waves crashing like echoes of distant regrets. My mind turned to the final chapters of my plan. I could slip away again, vanish into another state, or I could set in motion the next step, Travis delivering letters, letting them know I'm alive. As the sun sank low, painting the Pacific in gold, I pulled over at a roadside vantage point. Wind whipped my hair as I leaned against the railing, eyes burning with tears. This was the precise location a decade ago, where Angela and I once strolled with the twins on a weekend getaway. My memory conjured Lily squealing at the wind, Jacob insisting we stay for the sunset. The same place. A lifetime ago. I let out a trembling breath, weighed down by the knowledge that tomorrow I might contact Travis and instruct him to deliver the truth. Or I might not. My heart pounded with the final question. Can I face them? Above the roaring waves, seagulls wheeled, free. I gazed at them, longing for that kind of liberty. But real freedom doesn't come from hiding, it comes from confronting our mistakes. If I remain dead, I'm choosing the easy path of perpetual exile. If I reveal myself, I stand a chance to atone for the damage. For the first time in years, I allowed a small, shaky smile. I think I'm ready to face the consequences of my revenge. Even if it meant rejection, it was time to let them decide, because they deserve that power, and maybe I deserved whatever they would throw at me. I drove away from the coast as dusk folded the sky into twilight, my resolve shaky yet certain. I would contact Travis soon and begin the final fateful act. Angela, Jacob, Lily, they might hate me or by some miracle forgive me. One thing was sure, my next steps would reshape all our futures for better or worse. For weeks after my decision, I wrestled with how to approach telling my family that I was alive. A phone call was too sudden, too invasive. A face-to-face meeting? Maybe eventually, but not before giving them time to process. In the end, I turned to the man who helped me disappear in the first place, Travis Miller. He agreed to deliver letters ones I'd carefully penned for Angela, Jacob, and Lily. That felt like the gentlest way to open Pandora's box. I holed up in a tiny beachside motel, the same place I'd stayed while pondering whether to approach the kids. Over a weekend, I wrote 4 letters by hand. Letter to Angela. I poured out the truth, how I'd orchestrated the crash, faked my death, left her in the wake of guilt. I admitted my hatred, heartbreak, and the twisted logic that led me to vanish. I apologized for the agony, but also made it clear I couldn't erase what she'd done or how it all ended. I'm not here to ask for your love or forgiveness, I wrote. I only want you to know that I'm alive, and I realize now that burying myself didn't end my pain. Letter to Jacob. This was the hardest. My son, now a college junior. I'd left him when he was barely out of childhood. I'm sorry for every event I missed: soccer games, birthdays, father-son talks. I expressed how proud I was, how I kept tabs from afar. I wrote that I'd understand if he hated me, but if he ever wanted to speak, I'd be available. Letter to Lily. My baby girl, the bright-eyed artist. I wrote about my memories of her little hand in mine, how I used to read bedtime stories, how I cherished her creativity. You were so young when I disappeared. It kills me that I abandoned you, but I thought I was sparing you from a worse fate. Instructions for Travis. This was a brief note, explaining to Travis that if they wanted to meet me, he could coordinate. Otherwise, I'd remain at a distance. I sent him my new phone number, a simple flip phone I'd purchased with cash, and told him to only pass it along with Angela's or the kids' explicit permission. Once the letters were done, I sealed them in manila envelopes. My hands shook so badly I almost tore the paper. The next morning, I met Travis at a dimly lit coffee shop in a corner of downtown. He looked older, salt and pepper hair, heavier lines around his eyes. But the moment we recognized each other, an unspoken bond flared. We've kept secrets no one else knows. We sat in a corner booth nursing black coffees. I slid the envelopes across the table. This is everything, I said quietly. Give them time to process. Tell them I'm not seeking forgiveness, just wanting them to know the truth. Travis exhaled shakily, eyes flicking over the envelopes. You understand this might shatter their world again. My throat constricted. I know, but I can't keep lying in the shadows. They deserve honesty. Travis nodded. All right, I'll deliver them personally. Might take a few days to gather everyone's address. Jacob's at Redwood, Lily's at Pacific State. Angela's got a small condo near the coast. She sold the old house, by the way. A pang of melancholy hit me, but I forced a nod. Of course she sold it. Travis reached out, gently squeezing my forearm. You've taken a big step. Brace yourself for what comes next. Travis called me 2 days later. His voice was subdued. I delivered them. Angela looked stunned, nearly fainted. She locked herself in her bedroom. Jacob and Lily each reacted differently. Jacob's expression was pure shock and anger. Lily just started crying. My heart pounded. Did they say anything about contacting me? He hesitated. Not yet. I left them instructions. Said to call me or you if they wanted. I think they need time, David. I closed my eyes, chest tight. Thanks, Travis. Keep me posted. Days passed in agonizing silence. No calls, no texts. I paced my motel room, second-guessing everything. Maybe they hate me. Maybe they're so furious they won't respond. On the 5th day, the phone buzzed. I snatched it up, adrenaline flooding me. It was Travis again. "Lily wants to talk," he said softly. She gave me permission to pass along her number. "Is that okay?" My voice cracked. "Yes, please." Seconds later, a text came through with Lily's number. I stared at it, heart hammering. My daughter wants to speak to me. I fumbled to dial, each ring echoing in my ears. Finally, a soft click. "Hello?" Her voice older, deeper, but still carrying a lilting sweetness that yanked me back in time. I swallowed hard. "Lily, it's Dad." Her breath caught. "God, I can't believe this is real." Her tone shook with emotion. "Dad, why did you leave us?" My eyes stung with tears. "I'm so sorry," I rasped. "It was a messed-up plan. I convinced myself I was sparing you from a broken home. I was angry, hurt, and I thought faking my death would protect you. You thought we'd be better off believing our father died." Her voice quivered with heartbreak. "I cried at your funeral. I spent years blaming Mom, blaming fate myself." Guilt sliced through me like a razor. "I know," I whispered. "I was a coward, Lily. I had so much hate in me. I thought it was the only way to handle it." Silence, filled with her quiet tears. Finally, she asked, "Are you coming back? Or is this just a courtesy call to say, 'Hey, I'm alive, bye'?" I almost laughed at the rawness of her question. "I'm here if you want me in your life, but only if you and Jacob both want that." She sniffled. "Jacob's furious. He said if you show up, he might punch you. But I can tell he's also hurting. Mom's a wreck, apparently." A wave of complex emotions swelled inside me: joy, sorrow, fear. They're reacting exactly how they should, with confusion, anger, and heartbreak. "I'll do whatever it takes to prove I love you both," I managed. I never stopped. She let out a shaky breath. "I want to see you, face to face. Can we do that?" My heart leapt. Yes, absolutely. We decided Lily would talk to Jacob, see if he'd agree. Then we'd find a discreet place to meet. "Thank you, Lily," I whispered before we hung up, "for giving me a chance." Her voice was soft but firm. "Don't break our hearts again, Dad." An entire tense week dragged on before Lily texted me. "Jacob says he'll come, but he's not promising to be nice. Mom doesn't know if she can handle it. We're meeting at Travis's house Sunday afternoon." My pulse hammered. Angela might not come, or she's uncertain. That stung, but it also might be for the best. If she's too fragile, the kids and I can talk first. One step at a time. Sunday arrived, and I drove to Travis's suburban home in a modest neighborhood near the coast. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. This is it, the first real confrontation. I parked down the street, failing to calm my racing heart. What if they hate me? The front door loomed as I approached, an unassuming gray house with neat landscaping. My stomach flipped. I rang the bell, hearing muffled voices inside. Travis opened the door, giving me a grim nod. "They're in the living room," he murmured. "Good luck." I stepped in. Lily stood by the window, arms folded protectively. Jacob sat on the couch, glaring at me, jaw clenched. For a split second, I forgot how to breathe. They were so grown up, Jacob's eyes burned with anger, but tears welled at the corners. Lily's face was pale, determined. I managed a trembling, "Hi," my voice cracking pathetically. Jacob shot to his feet. "Hi!" he barked, bitter laughter escaping him. "You've been dead for half my life, and all you can say is hi!" I'm sorry," I stammered. Guilt constricted my throat. "I know this is unbelievable." He advanced a step, fists balled. "Unbelievable doesn't cover it, Dad. Do you know what it was like watching Mom break down year after year believing you were gone? Or the nightmares Lily had?" Tears blurred my vision. "Jacob, I'm so sorry. I thought I was saving you from a destructive divorce, from a father filled with rage. I never wanted you to suffer." His voice cracked. "You were the cause of our suffering." He flung an arm out, eyes ablaze. "You abandoned us. You never gave us a choice." A sob choked out of me, and I nodded, unable to speak. Lily hurried forward, placing a hand on Jacob's shoulder. "Jake, let him talk," she whispered, tears in her own eyes. He exhaled sharply, stepping back to sink onto the couch. I gingerly sat in a chair opposite them, my heart in my throat. They're giving me a chance. I told them everything. How I discovered Angela's affair with Charles, the fury and despair that nearly broke me, my twisted plan to protect them from a vicious divorce, and how I'd faked the crash to free them from the stigma. I spared no detail about the raw hatred I'd felt, nor the self-justifications I used to rationalize my deception. Lily wept silently while Jacob stared at the floor, jaw tight. When I finished, the silence weighed heavy. Finally, Jacob muttered, "You should have fought for us. Even if it meant divorce or custody battles, lying made it worse." A fresh wave of tears slipped from my eyes. "I see that now," I whispered. "I was blinded by my own pain. I couldn't see a future where we healed together." Lily wiped her cheeks. "What about Mom? Didn't you think how devastated she'd be?" I swallowed. I wanted her to feel guilt. Yes, I was consumed by betrayal. I never imagined it would last so long, but once I committed to the lie, I was stuck. I was a coward. Jacob's knuckles were white. "You claim it was all for us, but let's be real, it was for your revenge. You punished Mom. You punished us because you couldn't handle your anger." His words stabbed me. "That's fair," I choked out. "I can't deny it." Lily folded her arms, tears glistening. "We have to figure out where we go from here. You're our dad, but we don't know you anymore. We grew up without you." I stared at her with shattered emotion. "I'd like a chance to rebuild, even if it's just small steps. Or if you decide you can't forgive me, I'll respect that." Jacob's harsh gaze pinned me. "I'm not sure I can ever forgive you, but Lily wants to try. For now, I'll stick around for her sake." My heart twisted painfully at the resentment in his voice. "Okay," I murmured. "I accept that." As we quieted, I realized Angela wasn't in the room. "Where's your mom?" I asked hesitantly. Lily exchanged a look with Jacob, who shrugged. "She said she couldn't face you yet," Lily said. "She was sobbing all night after reading your letter. Travis invited her here, but she told us she's not ready." A pang of regret speared me. I glanced at Travis, who hovered by the doorway, arms folded. He gave a small shake of his head, no sign Angela would appear. My shoulders slumped. I can't force her. Jacob stood abruptly. "I need some air." He brushed past me without meeting my eyes, stepping onto the porch. Lily lingered, eyes wet. "I want to see you again, but everything feels surreal," she whispered. "Please don't vanish again, Dad, promise me." My voice shook. "I promise." She gave a tearful nod and followed Jacob outside, leaving me alone with Travis in the living room. The echo of that emotional storm reverberated in my chest, relief that they didn't reject me outright, guilt that Jacob's anger was rightfully scathing, heartbreak that Angela stayed away. Travis gently placed a hand on my shoulder. That went better than I expected. I let out a shaky breath. Jacob hates me. Lily's trying to be strong, and Angela, I trailed off. He nodded sympathetically. "Give them time." Over the next hour, we all stayed in Travis's house, but Jacob refused to re-enter the room. Lily returned briefly to give me her cell number. "I have to go back to campus soon, but you can call me. We can talk more. Slowly." I squeezed her hands, tears in my eyes. "Thank you, Lily. I love you." She swallowed, lips trembling. I love you too, Dad, even though I'm hurt." Then she hurried out. Jacob appeared, eyes bloodshot. "Look," he muttered, "I'm not making any promises, but Lily wants a relationship with you. I'll hang around to keep an eye on her, make sure you don't hurt her again." It stung, but I understood. "Fair enough," I managed. He nodded stiffly and left without another word. Then it was just me, Travis, and the quiet house. My entire body felt drained, but a fragile sense of hope fluttered inside. At least the door isn't slammed shut. As I stepped onto the porch to leave, Travis walked me to my car. "I'll let Angela know you asked about her," he offered. "Maybe she'll come around." I nodded, pressing my lips together. "Thank you. For everything." He gave me a sad smile. "This is only the start, David. Be prepared for more tears, more anger, maybe some progress. But I think the kids need you to face this with honesty." "I will," I whispered, climbing into my car. I watched Travis's figure recede in the rearview mirror as I drove away. My emotions churned, the day's events an emotional hurricane. Yet beneath it all, I felt a flicker of relief. They know I'm alive. Lily wants to talk. Jacob's furious, but at least he's not ignoring me. Angela was absent, paralyzed by her own fears or guilt. Part of me wanted to push for a confrontation immediately, my old anger rearing its head. But I took a breath, remembering how fragile this all was. I can't rush her. She'll either face me when she's ready or not at all. I pulled over on a quiet street, tears spilling as I rested my forehead on the steering wheel. I did it. It's out in the open. The final stage of my revenge, ironically, was returning to face the consequences of my own lie. The ghosts that haunted me for a decade now roamed free, swirling around my kids, my wife, and me. Yet for the first time, the numb shell around my heart cracked, allowing the possibility of healing no matter how painful. The days after that first meeting felt surreal. I holed up in a rented cottage on the outskirts of town, half expecting a phone call from Lily or Jacob every moment. The ache of uncertainty gnawed at me. Would they eventually want more contact, or was that single confrontation all they could handle? Finally, Lily texted me, "Can we meet for coffee near campus?" My heart soared and plummeted simultaneously. She's reaching out. I typed back a shaky reply, setting a time and place. The cafe she chose was small, tucked between a bookstore and a thrift shop. I arrived early, hands sweating. Lily walked in 5 minutes later wearing jeans and a hoodie, hair pulled in a messy ponytail. She paused at the door, scanning the room. When she spotted me, I saw the conflict in her eyes, relief, sadness, confusion. We ordered drinks, then sat at a corner table. For a moment, neither of us spoke, letting the ambient chatter fill the gap. Finally, Lily exhaled. "I'm still mad, Dad, but I can't pretend I don't want to know you." Her straightforwardness hit me hard. "I'm grateful for any chance," I murmured, voice trembling. She sipped her latte, eyes glistening. "I've always felt something was missing. Mom tried her best, but you—" Her voice caught. "We used to do silly art projects, remember?" My heart clenched. "Yes, you insisted on painting the walls with random shapes. We had to repaint before your mom freaked out." A watery smile ghosted across her face. "I loved that. Then you died, and I never got closure." I swallowed. "Lily, if I could go back—" She held up a hand. "I know, but we can only move forward. I need to understand who you are now." A hesitant hope flickered in my chest. We spent an hour exchanging pieces of our lives, mine heavily edited for the years in hiding, hers full of college classes, part-time jobs, a summer internship with an art gallery. She was open, yet cautious. I realized she was trying to gauge if she could trust me. When we parted, she allowed a brief, awkward hug. Tears sprang to my eyes at the warmth of her body against mine. "My daughter," she whispered, "don't vanish again, Dad." I promised in a broken voice that I wouldn't. Jacob, on the other hand, remained distant. I texted him a few times, simple greetings, no pressure. The only response I got was a terse, "I'm not ready to talk." I respected his boundary, though it hurt. Lily insisted he was processing, but also deeply resentful. "He hated seeing how Mom withered after you died. He can't just flip a switch," she explained. I understood. I'd inflicted a wound on both of them for years. If Lily was willing to mend it slowly, Jacob might need more time or might never come around. That's my cross to bear. Then, one evening, I got an unexpected call. It was Jacob's number. My heart lurched as I answered. "Hey," I said cautiously. He cut straight to the point. "I'm at Redwood's Campus Rec Center in the lounge. If you want to come by, now's your chance." A swirl of relief and dread soared. "I'll be there," I said, grabbing my keys. The drive was a blur. I parked on campus, following Jacob's texted directions. He sat alone in a corner booth, wearing a hoodie with Redwood's logo. His posture was rigid, jaw set. As I approached, he didn't stand, just jerked his head for me to sit. For a minute, we just stared. He broke the silence first, words clipped. "I need answers that Lily might not want to hear. About Mom." I swallowed. "Okay." He leaned in, eyes blazing. "Did you hate her so much you'd rather vanish than attempt therapy or separation? You talk a big game about protecting me and Lily, but I think you wanted to destroy Mom. She's lived in guilt for a decade." Guilt slammed me. "Yes, Part of me wanted her to suffer. I was consumed by betrayal. I was so furious that divorce seemed inadequate. I wanted some final solution that left her with the maximum regret, and I rationalized that the kids might be better off with a dead father than a father who was publicly humiliated. It was twisted. His nostrils flared. You realize how messed up that is, right? A tear slipped down my cheek. I know, Jake, I can't undo it. But I want to at least be honest now. He glared, fists clenched. Honesty now doesn't erase the years I needed a dad and didn't have one. Mom tried to fill the void. She never remarried, you know. She couldn't move on, haunted by the idea that you died hating her. My chest tightened with sorrow. I had no idea. Jacob's voice cracked. You were my hero, Dad. Then you vanished. I told my friends for years how you were the perfect father who died in a freak accident. To find out it was all a lie? I feel like an idiot. I choked back a sob. I'm so sorry. I never meant to make you feel foolish. I was blinded by my own pain. He scoffed, looking away. Well, you succeeded in punishing Mom, but you also punished us, so congratulations. His words were daggers, but I accepted them as my due. After a beat, he asked, Are you going to see her? I shivered. Angela. The woman I once adored, then loathed, then mourned. If she'll let me. Lily said she's not ready. Jacob glowered. Maybe you should give her space. But if you do meet, I hope you realize how deeply you cut her. He stood abruptly. I'm done here. I scrambled to my feet, wanting to hug him, but his stiff posture warned me not to. Jacob, if you ever want to talk more, I'll let Lily handle the emotional stuff. I just wanted clarity on how you rationalize this sick plan. His eyes glistened. You ripped our family apart in the name of saving it. Great job, Dad. With that, he stormed out, leaving me trembling in the booth. I pressed a hand over my mouth to stifle a sob. At least he confronted me. That's better than nothing. Through Lily's occasional updates, I learned that Angela was indeed spiraling. She'd read my letter dozens of times, cried non-stop, and retreated from her usual life. She canceled a few upcoming wedding gigs, citing family emergency. Lily urged me not to push for direct contact yet. Mom's in a fragile state. Guilt gnawed at me. I inflicted a second wave of devastation on her. Did I want that? Once, yes, my vengeful heart had yearned for her to suffer. Now, hearing it actually happening, I felt hollow. Revenge accomplished, but at what cost? A week later, Lily texted, Mom wants to talk. She asked me to set up a meeting with you. My stomach lurched. It was the moment I dreaded yet needed. Angela. We arranged it at Travis's house again. Lily insisted on being there in case the emotional explosion got too intense. Jacob refused to come. Not my circus, he said. I didn't blame him. I arrived first, pacing the living room while Lily hovered near the door. My hands trembled with anticipation. Then Angela appeared on the threshold wearing a simple blouse and jeans, hair pulled back. She looked older, yes, lines of sorrow around her eyes, a slight slump in her posture. But to me, she was still the woman I once cherished and once despised. The moment our gazes locked, she let out a choked sob and pressed a hand to her mouth. You're alive, she whispered, eyes wide. Tears coursed down her cheeks. I took a step forward, arms half raised. Angela. She flinched, stepping back, grief twisting her features. How could you? She gasped. I killed myself with guilt for years, David. I believed I caused your death. Tears streamed down my face. I know. I was cruel. I was furious about Charles, about us. I wanted to punish you. She moaned softly, sinking onto the couch. Lily rushed to her side, wrapping an arm around her. Angela's voice shook. I deserved your anger for the affair, but not this. Not you vanishing, letting me think I had your blood on my hands. I knelt, heart shredding in my chest. I can't justify it. I convinced myself the kids would be better off, that you'd regret betraying me, and I made it permanent. She looked up, heartbreak and fury mingling. I spent nights screaming for you, apologizing to your memory. I never remarried because I felt I owed you something. Her sobs turned ragged. I hate that part of me still loves you or who you were. This is so messed up. My own tears dripped onto the floor. I was lost, I never thought beyond my rage. I just wanted out, an escape that destroyed our marriage for good. And I justified it with half-truths about protecting the kids. She shook her head, tears soaking her cheeks. You robbed me of any chance to atone or talk things through. I wanted to beg for forgiveness after the affair, but you died. So I lived with that guilt day in, day out. My breath faltered. I'm sorry. I know those words are worthless after what I did, but I'm so sorry. If I could undo it. She released a shaky sigh. We can't go back. She closed her eyes, voice trembling. I don't know how to move forward. Part of me wants to scream at you forever for lying to me, for punishing me so brutally. Another part wants to cling to you because I've missed you so damn much. Lily rubbed her back, tears in her own eyes. Mom, it's okay to feel both. Angela opened her eyes, gazing at me with a mixture of longing and devastation. I don't know if I can forgive you, but I also can't deny I'm relieved you're alive. It's like having a piece of my soul returned. My heart broke at her words. I'll do whatever you need, give you space, or try to talk. I just want you to know the truth, that I'm here. She bowed her head, tears dripping onto her lap. I'm so conflicted, David. We're not the same people. Her voice wavered and she shuddered, covering her face with her hands. God, how do we fix this? For the next hour, we navigated a torrent of emotion. Angela confronted me about specific memories, her regrets, her attempts to contact me in the afterlife via letters or diaries, how she tried to piece together a life for Jacob and Lily. I confessed my guilt, my heartbreak, my slow realization that I'd never truly free myself of remorse. Lily interjected occasionally to help us keep calm, though tears flowed freely on all sides. By the time we paused, exhausted, an unspoken acknowledgement hung in the air. We'd inflicted deep wounds on each other, but there was still some bond, however tattered. Angela's eyes were swollen from crying. Lily's cheeks glistened. I felt numb, yet oddly lighter, like the suffocating secrets had finally spilled into the open. Angela exhaled shakily. I can't promise we'll be a family again, but can we try to find a path that's not drowning in hate? A raw hope flickered in me. Yes, I'd like that. Lily, wiping her tears, mustered a small, hopeful grin. Mom, maybe you can meet with Dad again soon, in smaller steps? Angela nodded, voice breaking. Okay, but not alone, not yet. I agreed instantly. Whatever helps. As Angela rose to leave, Lily walked her out, giving me a moment alone. I sank onto the couch, tears tracing fresh paths down my face. This was the meltdown, but also a chance at healing. My revenge had come full circle, and it left me standing in a wreckage with a possibility, just a possibility of rebuilding. When Lily returned, she offered a trembling smile. She wants to see you again, not sure when, but maybe at my place for lunch. Jacob might come too. We'll see. My chest filled with cautious gratitude. I'll wait. I'm not going anywhere. Lily squeezed my hand. I'm so angry you put us through this, but I see your regret. And I still love you, Dad. I closed my eyes, relief mingling with heartbreak. Thank you, Lily. I love you more than words can say. She nodded, tears brimming again, then turned to follow Angela. The door closed, leaving me alone in the hush of Travis's living room. I exhaled, shoulders slumping. It's not a fairy tale ending, but it's a step. At last I glanced at Travis, who hovered quietly in the hallway. He walked over, a gentle hand on my shoulder. This is what real consequences look like, David, he said softly. It's going to be messy, but at least now you're facing it together. I gave a shaky nod. No more lies, I whispered, even if it tears me apart. 3 weeks after Angela's meltdown, I found myself standing on Lily's small apartment balcony, arms resting on the railing. The late afternoon sun cast a warm glow over the city skyline. Inside, Lily bustled around the kitchen, preparing a simple lunch, her own way of bridging the gap between me, Angela, and possibly Jacob. My heart pounded, anxious about a second confrontation with Angela and whether Jacob would show. Slowly, the front door opened. I peeked inside from the balcony. Angela stepped in, wearing a plain sweater, her posture hesitant. Lily hugged her softly. Then, to my surprise, Jacob followed behind. He wore a guarded expression, hands stuffed in his pockets. My stomach tightened, but I forced myself to breathe. We're all in one space again, after more than a decade. I stepped inside, clearing my throat. Angela glanced at me, eyes reflecting nervous tension. Jacob avoided eye contact, though he gave a curt nod. Lily took a breath. All right, let's try to have a normal meal. Maybe talk about some next steps. We settled awkwardly around Lily's small dining table. The meal was a patchwork of spaghetti, salad, and awkward silence. I found myself hyper-aware of each motion, Angela picking at her food, Jacob swirling noodles around his fork, Lily observing us with quiet determination. Finally, Angela set her fork down, addressing me in a soft but firm voice. I've been seeing a therapist the last couple of weeks, trying to process your letter and the reality that you're alive. I swallowed. That's good. I want you to heal, Angela. You deserve that. She nodded, tears glimmering. She suggested I write a letter to you to express what I never got to say. I did, but maybe it's better said face to face. My heart thudded. I'm listening. Jacob's gaze flickered between us, arms folded. Lily lowered her eyes, sensing this was a private confession, but neither left the table. Angela inhaled shakily. David, I betrayed you with Charles. It was a terrible mistake, but I loved you, I still do in some way. I'd have spent my life trying to make amends if you'd given me the chance. Instead, you took that option away. You died in my mind, and I died a little every day afterward. Tears pricked my eyes. I know. I robbed us both of the chance to see if we could heal. I'm so sorry. She continued, voice trembling. I can't promise I'll ever forgive you for leaving me with that guilt, but a part of me hopes we can find peace. Maybe not as husband and wife, too much damage. But for the sake of our kids, for the sake of our own hearts, maybe we can coexist. A breath I hadn't realized I was holding escaped. I'd like that, even if it's just occasional communication or family gatherings for Lily and Jacob. Jacob shifted in his seat. Family gatherings might be a stretch, but Lily and I graduate in a couple of years. I guess we'll want both parents at the ceremony. His voice was clipped, but it was an acknowledgement. Lily seized on that glimmer of hope. Yes, exactly. You two can stand on opposite sides if you must, but at least be there. Angela bowed her head, tears slipping free. All right, that's a start. My chest clenched with gratitude. A small step. For a few minutes, conversation meandered hesitantly. Lily mentioned her art projects. Jacob talked about an internship. Angela nodded. I listened. Then Jacob suddenly slammed his fork down, tension snapping. You know what? This is still insane, he burst out, eyes blazing at me. We're sitting here like we're one big dysfunctional family, but I still can't wrap my head around the fact you faked your death. Dad, do you even realize the depth of that betrayal? I had panic attacks for years, terrified I'd lose someone else. A painful jolt shot through me. Jacob, He stood, trembling, tears threatening. I'm trying not to punch you or run away, but it's so damn hard. Angela reached out, tears in her own eyes. Jacob, honey. He turned to her, eyes shining with pain. You broke Dad's trust first with Charles. Then Dad outdid you by lying to all of us. I'm sick of living in the wreckage you both created. Silence crashed over the table. My heart ached at how our wrongdoing had shaped him. Lily dabbed at her eyes. Jake, she whispered. Jacob took a breath, shoulders heaving. But I guess I can't escape it. I can only decide if I want a relationship with either of you. He glared at me. I might try, but I'm not guaranteeing anything. If you cross me again, I swear I'll... My voice trembled. I understand. I won't break your trust a second time. I promise. He scoffed, but I caught a flicker of relief in his gaze, as if part of him wanted to trust me. Well, time will tell. Then he collapsed into the chair again, burying his face in his hands. Angela placed a hand on his shoulder, tears lining her cheeks. Lily reached out too, forming a fragile chain of support. I watched, tears sliding silently down my face. This was the raw outcome of my revenge, the aftermath we all had to endure. Eventually, the emotional storm eased. We ended the meal quietly, exhausted. As the four of us stood, Lily said, "We don't have to fix everything today, but maybe we can do this again or talk individually, slowly." Jacob nodded, not meeting my gaze. "Yeah, maybe." Angela exhaled, clasping Lily's hand. "I agree. This we need more time." I murmured a soft, "Thank you," voice thick with emotion. They nodded in various degrees of acceptance, then parted ways. Jacob stormed out first, Lily following to check on him. Angela lingered a moment, looking at me, heartbreak etched on her face. "I'm so tired," she whispered, "but maybe we can keep talking. In therapy, or with Lily's help." I swallowed. "I'm here. Whenever you're ready." She offered a tremulous nod, then left with watery eyes. The door shut softly. A quiet exit, but not final. We're all battered, but we haven't given up on bridging the gap. As the weeks passed, we established a fragile rhythm. Lily texted me regularly, sharing bits of her life, asking about mine. Sometimes we met for lunch, hugging goodbye with cautious warmth. Jacob remained distant, occasionally replying to a text with curt updates. Angela and I exchanged a few written messages. She was in therapy and said it was helping her process the old guilt plus this new betrayal. "We'll see where it leads," she wrote. One evening, Lily suggested a group therapy session for all four of us, if we were willing. Jacob balked, but Angela surprisingly agreed. "It might be good to have a mediator," she said in an email. I told them I'd do whatever it took to help them heal, even if it meant confronting every dark corner of our past. In the final quiet of my rented cottage, I realized my revenge had long since lost its meaning. The wife who betrayed me had suffered in ways I never anticipated, and I'd inflicted suffering on the children I loved more than my own life. Now, we were at a juncture facing the emotional debris with an uneasy willingness to move forward. Maybe that's the only real justice, confronting each other with painful truths. In our chosen scenario, the hush after that emotional meeting lingers. None of us can rewind the clock or fully mend the wounds. But we're not stuck in the purgatory of ignorance anymore. We have the truth in all its messy complexity. That's a start. For Jacob, it may take a year or more before he can look me in the eye without anger. For Lily, she's forging a cautious bond, texting me sketches or random jokes. For Angela, the road to acceptance is long. She's haunted by the knowledge that her betrayal sparked the chain of events, yet she also resents the cruelty I inflicted in return. If a semblance of peace emerges, it'll be forged through time, therapy, and raw honesty. For me, I carry the weight of my own choices. The lonely life I built under a false name is no longer the prison it once was. I can be more open, gradually stepping back into legal identity if the kids want me in their future. The statute of limitations debate is moot now. The real verdict is emotional, not legal. As I reflect in my rented cottage, I realize that vengeance rarely brings the closure we crave. It just reshapes pain into a new form. Yet in this late reckoning, there's a sliver of hope that we might transform our suffering into something resembling understanding, maybe even a fractured form of forgiveness. It won't be neat or painless, but it's real. And that's all we can ask.